Chapter 10-11. 1011 Fighting Chu Kuang. Ha ha ha. Chu Kuang suddenly laughed. After a while, he said, "Stand up for them." How was that possible? For someone like Ling Yunkong, if I were to see him using the name of the Floating Mountain Martial School to commit crimes, I would immediately behead him with a single blade. Lu Ming's eyes flickered, but he did not say anything. He had heard of the name Chu Kuang before. Chu Kuang was ranked second among the 10 Heavens Pride experts of the Floating Mountain Martial School. He was incomparably powerful and had unparalleled talent. At the same time, this person was wild and unruly, and liked to make friends. From the looks of it, he was indeed not someone like Ling Yunkong. I was just passing by today. I didn't expect to encounter such an interesting thing. I like to find experts to spar with. Lu Shaoqing, fight with me. I'll use this pristine water lotus as a bet. If you win, you can take the pristine water lotus. If I win, the pristine water lotus will belong to me. How about it? Chu Kuang said as he looked at Lu Ming. He still did not look at old monster Blackwater. All right. Lu Ming nodded and agreed without hesitation. Chu Kuang was clearly a warmonger. Lu Ming knew that it was useless to avoid a fight against such a person. It would be better to fight him. As long as his combat strength was stronger than his opponent would naturally be convinced. Boom! Boom! Lu Ming and Chu Kuang's auras exploded as they faced each other from a distance. The early stage of the 9th level spirit embryo realm is indeed powerful. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. Chu Kuang's cultivation had already reached the early stage of the 9th level spirit embryo realm, which was even higher than the Emperor Gods in the Battle of Providence. Of course, a high cultivation did not mean that his combat strength was stronger than the Emperor Gods. Detestable. Old monster Blackwater was sandwiched between the two, and his face turned ugly. These two were going to fight, and he was completely ignored. He gritted his teeth and rushed to the side, trying to escape. At this moment, Lu Ming and Chu Kuang both moved and attacked old monster Blackwater. The terrifying qi enveloped old monster Blackwater, and his face turned pale. Old monster Blackwater used all his strength to attack, but the qi from Lu Ming and Chu Kuang kept falling on his body, causing him to shake violently. Lu Ming and Chu Kuang were crossing swords with old monster Blackwater. No matter how powerful Blackwater was, having awakened a 3rd level divine level bloodline and cultivated for thousands of years, he was still in a miserable state in the battle between Lu Ming and Chu Kuang. He could not charge forward at all. Instead, he was sent flying here and there, blood spurting from his mouth. Boom! 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 Lu Ming's fists continued to bombard the air, and streams of fist radiance shot forward like meteors. Chu Kuang's palms continued to swing out, and streams of bone-chilling saber radiance burst out. The pitiful old monster Blackwater was stuck in the middle, desperately trying to resist. It was a tragic sight. The surrounding onlookers looked at each other and couldn't help but sympathize with old monster Blackwater. Arg, I don't want the purified water lotus anymore. I will give it to you. Old monster Blackwater took out the cleansing water lotus throne and threw it into the distance. Lu Ming and Chu Kuang deliberately avoided the pristine water lotus thrones. Old monster Blackwater also took the opportunity to break out of the encirclement and escaped far away. He looked at the scene with lingering fear. Ha, with one less hindrance, it's just nice to fight with all my strength. Chu Kuang laughed as he unsheathed the saber on his back. An even more terrifying and cold saber radiance burst out. Good. Lu Ming's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. He strode forward and slowly increased the power of the prison-suppressing heaven technique as he fought Chu Kuang. As for the pristine water lotus throne, no one dared to touch it. Everyone knew that if anyone dared to take this opportunity to seize the pristine water lotus throne, they would immediately end up like old monster Heishui. They were not sure if they could survive the battle between the two Heaven's Pride level experts. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged dozens of moves. Chu Kuang was very strong. His cultivation was at the early stage of the 9th level spirit embryo realm, and the bloodline he had awakened was definitely not weak. It was very likely to be a 7th level divine level bloodline. Lu Ming felt that Chu Kuang was a Heaven's Pride expert on the same level as Xue Jianyi and AO2. If they were to fight at the same level, Chu Kuang would not be weaker than Xue Jianyi, AO2, and the others. His combat strength was extremely terrifying. See Law. Chu Kuang's saber slashed out, and a terrifying saber light flashed. A white ice crystal appeared in the air, and the layer of ice on the black lake became thicker and thicker. He has actually cultivated the ice concept to such a level. No, there is also the water concept. Lu Ming's heart stirred. It was obvious that Chu Kuang had merged the ice and water concepts together, and the power had increased by several times. Roar! A dragon's roar resounded as two more streams of dragon energy burst out from Lu Ming's body. With the dragon's roar, Lu Ming's strength increased greatly. He took a step forward and his fist radiance shook the sky. The fist radiance shattered Chu Kuang's blade light, filling the sky with ice shards. Chu Kuang's eyes revealed a serious look. Above his head, an ice river actually appeared. On the ice river, 7 meridian cycles shone. He had indeed awakened a 7th level divine level bloodline. As soon as the ice river appeared, the air became even colder. Hundreds of miles around them were covered in the cold air. Many people retreated. If they were covered by the ice, even their Jin Yuan would be frozen. However, Chu Kuang's bloodline appeared, but he did not merge his bloodline. Instead, with a flash of his eyes, his bloodline re-entered his body. He retreated quickly and dodged Lu Ming's fist radiance. He shouted, "Stop, stop, I'm not fighting anymore, I'm not fighting anymore. I've lost this battle." Lu Ming was stunned and stopped. The crowd was also stunned. Chu Kuang had clearly not used his full strength yet. Why did he stop and admit defeat? Lu Ming's lips curled into a smile. Chu Kuang was a very straightforward person. He probably felt that even if he fused with the bloodline, he wouldn't be confident, so he simply admitted defeat. Lu Shaoqing, I'm impressed, I'm impressed. This pristine water lotus throne is yours. Chu Kuang sheathed his saber and grinned. Lu Ming stretched out his hand and sucked the cleansing water lotus throne into his palm, storing it in his storage ring. Many people had envious looks on their faces, especially the older generation who were stuck at the perfected spirit embryo realm. They were even more envious. However, they did not dare to make a move against an expert like Lu Ming. Many thanks. Lu Ming put away the pristine water lotus throne. He was in a good mood and cupped his fists at Chu Kuang. Ha, no need to be so polite. I was no match for you. Of course, this cleansing water lotus throne is yours. Lu Shaoqing, it's a pity that I didn't see you in the Battle of Providence. If you think highly of me, how about we be friends? I'll treat you to a drink. Chu Kuang laughed. He was very forthright. Lu Ming nodded in his heart. This Chu Kuang was indeed as the rumors said. He was bold and uninhibited and liked to make friends. He was not someone that Ling Yunkong could compare to. Since Brother Chu has invited me, I naturally have to give him face. Unfortunately, I need to find a place to cultivate in seclusion for a while. I'm afraid we can't have a drink together. Lu Ming said. Chu Kuang nodded and said, I understand. How about this? I'll be in the Sunset Moon City for the time being. If Brother Lu ends his seclusion in 10 days, you can come to the Sunset Moon City to find me. There's going to be a grand event soon. I'll go and take a look with Brother Lu. After saying this much, Chu Kuang turned around and stepped into the air. Looking at Chu Kuang's back, Lu Ming was reminded of Yan Kuangtu. Their personalities were very similar, both bold and uninhibited. However, Yan Kuangtu was even more arrogant, unruly, and audacious than Chu Kuang. He was more arrogant than Chu Kuang and didn't give face to anyone. In comparison, he had fewer friends. After Chu Kuang left, Lu Ming's figure flashed and he soared into the sky, leaving the place as well. Chapter 10-12 1012 Fourth Level Water Concept. After traveling hundreds of thousands of miles, Lu Ming appeared at the bottom of a small lake. He then entered the mountain and river diagram and sat cross-legged on a mountain peak. He began to refine the blood essence energy and runes that he had devoured. This time, Lu Ming had devoured more than 100 experts above the spirit embryo realm. Among them, there was no lack of 8th or 9th level spirit embryo realm and even perfected spirit embryo realm. Furthermore, many of them cultivated the concept of water. So many concept runes were continuously refined and integrated into Lu Ming's own water concept runes. His water concept was rapidly improving. In just a few hours, Lu Ming's water concept had broken through to level 3 upper tier and continued to improve. The early stage of the third level, the middle stage, and the late stage. When all the concept runes were refined, Lu Ming's water concept rose to the late stage of level 3. When Lu Ming's concept of water advanced to the later stage of the third level, the spirit embryo in his dantian finally erupted with a powerful suction force. The energy that had been devoured seemed to have found an outlet and was frantically converted into essential core, increasing Lu Ming's cultivation. Lu Ming's cultivation, which had stagnated for more than half a year, began to improve rapidly. The early stage of the 8th level spirit embryo realm, the middle stage of the 8th level spirit embryo realm. When everyone's energy was refined, Lu Ming's cultivation rose to the peak of the 8th level spirit embryo realm. However, his bloodline had not been upgraded. All the blood essence he had used to upgrade his 9-dragon bloodline was obviously not enough. After refining all the energy, Lu Ming opened his eyes and a lotus platform appeared in his hand. The lotus platform had 81 petals, and each petal was filled with a strong water concept and water spiritual qi. Lu Ming planned to use the pristine water lotus throne to continue improving his water concept. He first plucked 3 petals and swallowed them. The refined flower petal melted in his mouth and a cool feeling flowed down his throat. It turned into a cool energy that filled Lu Ming's entire body. At this moment, Lu Ming felt as if he was surrounded by endless water vapor. He could clearly sense the concept of water. Lu Ming closed his eyes and continued to cultivate in seclusion. When the energy of the 3 flower petals disappeared, Lu Ming plucked another 3 flower petals and swallowed them. Lu Ming's water concept began to improve rapidly again. After refining 27 flower petals, his water concept had broken through to the full stage of level 3 and was on par with the wind, fire, and thunder concepts. It was even slightly higher than the earth concept. His earth will was only at the peak of level 3 upper tier. It was still a step away from the full circle of level 3. This was not the end. Lu Ming continued to refine the remaining flower petals. He was trying to break through to the 4th level of the water concept. The cleansing water lotus throne was extremely useful for 3rd level intent realm and the advancement of 3rd level intent realm to 4th level intent realm. It wasn't just for show. It was indeed miraculous. Moreover, Lu Ming's current level of comprehension was terrifying. Therefore, when all the petals were refined, Lu Ming actually broke through the bottleneck in one go and his water concept broke through to the 4th level. The water concept was the concept that Lu Ming had comprehended the latest. He did not expect that he would be the first to break through to level 4. Lu Ming opened his eyes, looking delighted. To be able to break through to level 4 was also beyond his expectations. He didn't have much hope of successfully breaking through. After all, the 4th level intent realm was the last intent realm. It was extremely difficult to break through. Many of the older generation were stuck at this step, unable to break through for their entire lives. Lu Ming did not expect that he would break through this time. Lu Ming estimated that this had a lot to do with his immense luck and the tenfold increase in his comprehension. Otherwise, he would not have been able to break through to level 4 so easily, even with a treasure like the cleansing water lotus throne. Of course, the stage of the spiritual god realm was not as simple as just the concept. Some people could not break through to the spiritual god realm even after their concept had broken through to the 4th level. Of course, Lu Ming was still a distance away from breaking through to the spiritual god realm. There was no need to consider it for the time being. 10 days have passed. It's time for me to leave. I'll travel and cultivate while heading to the ancient Saint dynasty. Lu Ming pondered in his heart. This was his current plan. At the moment, his cultivation was still weak. Even if he reached the ancient Saint dynasty, he would not have the ability to take Xian Yanqing away. He planned to travel around while taking risks to cultivate and improve his strength. After exiting the mountain and river diagram, Lu Ming soared into the sky and headed west. Lu Ming's speed was not very fast. However, one day later, he had covered a distance of millions of miles. A large city appeared in front of them. On the city gate, there were 3 big words: Sunset Moon City. Lu Ming's heart stirred. It was such a coincidence. Chu Kuang had said that if Lu Ming ended his closed-door cultivation 10 days later, he could come to the Waning Moon residence in the Sunset Moon City to have a drink with Chu Kuang. Previously, Lu Ming did not take it to heart. He did not expect that he would still come to the Sunset Moon City. Since you're here, let's go to the Xiaoye house. Chu Kuang said that there will be a grand event soon. What is it? Lu Ming smiled and walked into the Sunset Moon City. Sunset Moon City was huge, twice the size of Lishui City, and the Howling Moon House was very famous in the city. This was because the Xiaoye House was the biggest restaurant in the Sunset Moon City. After asking around, Lu Ming found out where the Xiaoye House was. After turning a few streets, a 5-story restaurant appeared in front of him. Guest, do you want to drink? Even in the entire floating mountain range, the wine of our shop is among the best. Lu Ming had just entered the restaurant when a waiter came up to him. I'm here to find someone. Lu Ming said. Oh, who are you looking for? This little one will have some impression of anyone who comes into this shop to drink. The waiter replied. Chu Kuang. Lu Ming said. So you're the guest that young Master Chu Kuang was waiting for. Young Master Chu Kuang is in the private room on the 5th floor. He has been drinking here for 3 days. He said that a friend will come to look for him in the next few days. I think it must be you, young master. Please follow me. The waiter said. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He did not expect Chu Kuang to really be waiting for him here. He had even waited for 3 days. It seemed that Chu Kuang was right to say that he liked to make friends. He followed the waiter to a private room on the 5th floor. Before the waiter could announce his arrival, a loud laugh came from the private room. Ha ha ha, I could feel your presence the moment Brother Lu arrived. Squeak. The door of the private room opened and Chu Kuang walked out with a smile on his face. The waiter also left. Brother Chu, were you waiting for me? Lu Ming asked. That's right. Since I said I wanted to be friends with you, I naturally had to wait for you here. However, I was going to wait for 1 more day at most. If you didn't come by then, I would have to leave. Fortunately, you came. It seems that Brother Lu still acknowledges me, haha. Chu Kuang laughed heartily. Lu Ming felt ashamed in his heart. He did not plan to come at first. He just happened to pass by Sunset Moon City and decided to come and take a look. Brother Lu, please, the wine is ready. Chu Kuang waved his hand and Lu Ming and Chu Kuang entered the private room one after another. In the corner of the private room, there were already a few empty jars. It was obvious that Chu Kuang had drunk a lot of wine these few days. Ha, Brother Lu, you must be joking. I'm a person who loves wine as much as my life. I have to come to this Moonhowl Tavern's wine every once in a while. Chu Kuang laughed. On the table, there were already 2 jars of wine. Chapter 10:13. 1013 The Heavens Pride Level of the Central Continent. Lu Ming opened the cover of a jar of wine and took a big gulp. He immediately felt a lingering fragrance in his mouth and could not help but praise, "Good wine." Chu Kuang also picked up the wine jar and took a big gulp. Then, he looked at Lu Ming and said, "Brother Lu, you didn't use your full strength in the battle that day, did you?" "Brother Chu, what makes you think so?" Lu Ming smiled and did not give a direct reply. "Feeling." Chu Kuang said, "I have a feeling that if I continue to fight, I will definitely lose. Moreover, I will lose miserably. Therefore, I admitted defeat so as not to embarrass myself." "Ha!" Lu Ming smiled faintly and did not comment. Of course, he had not used his full strength back then. "Brother Lu, you're not from the Central Continent, are you?" Chu Kuang suddenly said. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat and his eyes flashed. "Brother Chu, what makes you think so?" "It's just a random guess. Every time there's a battle of providence, all the heroes in the world will be dispatched. They won't miss this opportunity. Brother Lu, you're so talented, but I've never seen you in the battle of providence. I'm just curious. So I'm guessing that Brother Lu might be a peerless genius from the East Barren, Northern Plains, or Southern Nether." Chu Kuang laughed. "Brother Chu, you're thinking too much. I've been cultivating in the mountains all this time, so I missed the battle of providence." Lu Ming said. "Ha, Brother Lu, don't think too much. I'm just asking. I like to make friends with all the heroes in the world, especially one like Brother Lu. No matter where you're from, I'm definitely going to make friends with you. Please." Chu Kuang lifted the wine jar and said. Lu Ming also picked up the wine jar and took a big gulp. Chu Kuang's words didn't seem to be false. He was just casually asking. This was indeed the case. The battle of karmic luck had already ended, and yet such a genius had suddenly appeared. Everyone was curious. However, Lu Ming was not very worried because his second body was in the Yin and Yang mountain. He would appear occasionally during this period of time. De and Martial Emperor would not suspect that Lu Ming would appear in the Central Continent. After all, the twin forbidden technique was too freakish. No one would believe it if they didn't see it with their own eyes. Furthermore, Lu Ming did not reveal many of his signature bloodlines in the Central Continent, nor did he show any signs of the dragon bloodline's eruption. No one would suspect that he was Lu Ming from the East Barren. The two of them drank and chatted casually. Lu Ming also took the opportunity to ask Chu Kuang about the specific situation of the major forces in the Central Continent. In the Central Continent, there were a total of 18 overlord forces, both humans and demons. They each occupied the vast East Barren. Each overlord force had an emperor in charge and was extremely powerful. Under the 18 overlord forces, there were many other powerful forces. Some of them were extremely powerful and had supreme beings as their leaders. Lu Ming sighed to himself. The Central Continent was indeed powerful. The Eastern Barren territory could not compare to it. He wondered how powerful the ancient sacred dynasty of the Central Continent was when they were victorious. "Brother Lu, in my opinion, you have a great chance of becoming a second-grade heaven's favorite." Chu Kuang sighed. Second-class heaven's favorite? Lu Ming was a little surprised. "Oh. So Brother Lu doesn't know about this?" In the Central Continent, the top Heaven's Pride experts are divided into 3 ranks. I am a third-grade Heaven's Pride expert, and in the Floating Mountain sect, there are only 3 Heaven's Pride experts above the 3rd grade. The others like Yang Tsong and Hai Ziming you've seen before are not even in the 3rd grade. Chu Kuang explained. Brother Chu is only a 3rd-grade Heaven's favorite. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Chu Kuang's talent was definitely not inferior to that of Blood Sword 1 and AO2 from the East Barren. However, he was only a 3rd-grade Heaven's favorite. If he was a second grade or even a first grade heaven's favorite, how terrifying would that be? That's right, I'm only a third-class heaven's favorite, and in the floating mountain sect, only the first among the younger generation can be considered a second-class heaven's favorite. However, there aren't many second-class heaven's favorites in the central continent, only about 20 of them. Chu Kuang said. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Chu Kuang was only a third-grade heaven's favorite. A second-grade heaven's favorite must be stronger and more talented. Lu Ming speculated that a second-grade heaven's favorite was most likely at the level of an emperor god. If they were really at the level of emperor gods, there were actually more than 20 of them, which was terrifying. Emperor gods were said to be able to inherit the legacy of martial Emperor De and have the potential to become emperors in the future. They were extremely rare in the entire history of the Eastern Barren Territory. There were more than 20 heaven's favorites of this level in the central continent. What about the stronger first-grade heaven's favorites? Chu Kuang seemed to have read Lu Ming's mind. He continued, above second-grade heaven's pride experts are first-grade heaven's pride experts. However, there are only 5 of them, and they are known as the top 5 young warriors. Each of them is a figure that can suppress an era. They are incomparably terrifying, peerless, and extremely powerful. Chu Kuang's eyes were filled with deep respect and fear. It was obvious that the top 5 young warriors held a high position in his heart. The top 5 young warriors. Lu Ming's eyes glowed with a strong fighting spirit. Supreme talents like the Emperor God were also extremely powerful and could become emperors in the future. They were all incredible existences. However, Lu Ming was not under too much pressure because he had fought with the Emperor God. Although the Emperor God was extremely terrifying, Lu Ming was confident that he would be able to suppress the Emperor God again if he met him in the future. However, those who surpassed the Emperor God level were terrifying. Lu Ming could not imagine how powerful they were. However, this made Lu Ming even more excited. Lu Ming was not afraid of having an opponent. He was afraid of not having an opponent. With an opponent, he would have pressure and motivation. The central continent was indeed more brilliant than the east continent. The competition between geniuses was more intense. The battle for providence in the central continent must be extremely intense. It's a pity that I'm not in the central continent. Lu Ming secretly felt that it was a pity. Brother Lu, do you still remember that I said there would be a grand event in the near future? In 10 days, the 2 second-class heaven's favorites will fight at the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. That will definitely attract a lot of attention. After the Battle of Providence, many heaven's favorites will probably go into seclusion and come out again. Chu Kuang said. Lu Ming's eyes flickered with a hint of anticipation. He speculated that a second-grade heaven's favorite was a heaven's favorite at the level of an emperor god. A battle between 2 such heaven's favorites was indeed a grand event. It was definitely a rare sight and Lu Ming did not want to miss it. This was a good opportunity for him to see how strong Central Continent's top heaven's favorites were. Why are 2 such geniuses fighting? Lu Ming asked curiously. One of them is Master Blood Luo from Cold Blood Hall, and the other is Yin Bupo from Sky Eagle Castle. They are the strongest experts among the younger generation in their respective forces, and they have a grudge against each other. So, it's normal for Master Blood Luo and Yin Bupo to not get along. The 2 of them exchanged thousands of blows in the Battle of Providence, but neither of them won. They agreed to fight another day, and the date of their next battle is in 10 days. Chu Kuang explained. Lu Ming nodded. So that was the case. Brother Chu, when do we leave? Lu Ming asked. We can leave immediately. But before we go to the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, I have to go back to the floating mountain. Brother Lu, do you dare to go with me? Chu Kuang said. Why wouldn't I? Lu Ming smiled. Chapter 1014. 1014 The Divine Mountain in the Sky. The floating mountain sect was one of the overlords of the central continent. Naturally, it had an extraordinary atmosphere. However, Lu Ming was still a little stunned after seeing it. In front of him was the boundless water. Above the boundless water, there was a huge divine mountain floating in the air. This huge mountain had no end in sight. It was like the legendary divine mountain where ancient gods lived. It was suspended in the air thousands of meters high. The floating mountain, as its name suggested, was really a floating divine mountain. From a distance, the floating mountain was filled with clouds and water vapor. Under the sunlight, rainbows hung in the sky. At first glance, there were countless rainbows, which were extremely dazzling, like a paradise on earth. What a great floating mountain! Lu Ming could not help but sigh in admiration. Ha ha ha! Let's go! Chu Kuang laughed and flew towards the floating mountain with Lu Ming. With Chu Kuang leading the way, they naturally entered the floating mountain. Lu Shaoqing. At this moment, a voice of disbelief was heard. Lu Ming turned around and could not help but find it funny. Wasn't that Ling Yunkong? Lu Shaoqing, you dare to come to the floating mountain? Ling Yunkong's eyes were wide open. He was stunned for a moment before he turned around and saw Chu Kuang. His expression changed. What's wrong? Brother Lu is my friend. Do you have a problem with him? I've heard a few things about you from Brother Lu. Chu Kuang looked at Ling Yunkong and licked his lips. An ominous glint flashed in his eyes. Ling Yunkong's expression changed again. His face turned pale and bloodless. He hurriedly said, No, Lu Shaoqing is your friend, Senior Chu. How could I have any objections? I have no objections. When Ling Yunkong saw Chu Kuang, he was like a mouse seeing a cat. He was scared to death. In the future, you'd better not use the name of the floating mountain martial school to do evil things. Also, Brother Lu's friend, if you dare to touch a hair on your head again, I will cut you down with my knife. Chu Kuang's eyes flickered with an ominous glint as he looked at Ling Yunkong. I don't dare, I definitely don't dare. Ling Yunkong nodded his head repeatedly, cold sweat dripping down his back. Get lost! Chu Kuang coldly shouted. Ling Yunkong hurriedly ran away in fear. This Ling Yunkong seems to be very afraid of you. Lu Ming said. I've taught him a few times in the past. There was also a heaven's favorite who was similar to Ling Yunkong. The two of them were always up to no good. I chopped off one of them. He was afraid that I would chop off his head too. Chu Kuang said with a smile. Lu Ming nodded. Ling Yunkong was extremely afraid of Chu Kuang. Chu Kuang's innate talent was much greater than Ling Yunkong's. Even if he killed Ling Yunkong, the higher-ups of the floating mountain martial school wouldn't stand up for him. The floating mountain was really huge. The two of them flew on the mountain for hundreds of thousands of miles and came to the edge of a cliff. On the edge of the cliff, there was a courtyard. Wenjing, I'm here. Chu Kuang called out as they arrived at the courtyard. Not long after, the door of the courtyard opened, and a young woman walked out. The young woman had a graceful figure and skin as white as snow. She was very beautiful in a light yellow dress. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Zhang Wenjin, ranked third among the top 10 proud children of heaven of the floating mountain sect, was this woman? Zhang Wenjin was one of the 3 geniuses of the floating mountain martial school who were at least a third-class heaven's favorite. Brother Chu, you're here. You're 2 days late. The young woman said. Ha, don't blame me for being quiet. I just made a new friend and drank with him for 2 more days. So, I rushed over. Chu Kuang laughed and continued to introduce. Wenjin, this is Brother Lu, Lu Shaoqing. Brother Lu, this is my junior sister, Zhang Wenjin. Chu Kuang said. You're Lu Shaoqing. Before Lu Ming could say anything, Zhang Wenjin spoke up and looked at Lu Ming curiously. Have you heard of my name before, Wenjin? Lu Ming said. Of course I've heard of you. You suppressed Ling Yunkong and defeated Hai Ziming. Now, the news has spread all over the Floating Mountain Martial School. How could I not know? Zhang Wenjin smiled. Ha, I believe that Brother Lu's name will soon spread throughout the central continent. Chu Kuang laughed. Zhang Wenjing was slightly surprised. It seemed that Chu Kuang liked Lu Shaoqing very much. Obviously, Zhang Wenjin had not heard about the battle for the Pure Water Lotus Throne. If she had, she would not be so surprised. Wenjing, let's go. Let's set off for the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Chu Kuang said. This place was quite far from the Heavenly Jewel Mountain, and he had to leave as soon as possible. Zhang Wenjin nodded. Then, the three of them flew out of the floating mountain and headed northwest. Cold Blood Hall was located to the north of the floating mountain. It was an overlord force close to the floating mountain and the East Baron. The Sky Eagle Castle was to the west of Cold Blood Hall. Sky Pillar Mountain was in the middle of Cold Blood Hall and Sky Eagle Castle, northwest of Floating Mountain. It was very far away. In the East Baron, it was at least 50 regions away. It was obviously impossible to travel such a distance by flying. It was too slow. They first took the teleportation array and teleported to the area near the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. Then, they flew away. The Pillar of Heaven's mountains was a barren land, surrounded by mountains. The three of them flew for several days before they suddenly stopped in front of a forest. What a strong smell of blood! Zhang Wenjin's expression changed. Lu Ming's and Chu Kuang's faces darkened as well. They could also smell the extremely thick stench of blood. The smell of blood came from the mountain on the right. Let's go and take a look. Chu Kuang was the first to fly in that direction. Lu Ming and Zhang Wenjin followed. Not long after, they discovered the source of the bloody smell. In the mountains, there was a stone castle. It was a small town with many people living in it, but now, everyone here was dead. The town was filled with dead bodies. The three of them swept their gazes across the sky. They estimated that no less than 100,000 people had died. They had become corpses. The air was filled with blood qi. No wonder the three of them could smell the blood from so far away. Who is it? He actually killed so many people, most of whom were just ordinary people. Zhang Wenjin's face turned pale. The blood qi here is all gathering in one direction. Lu Ming said. He observed carefully and realized that the blood qi in the air was all gathering in one direction. Could it be the Cold Blood Hall? Chu Kuang's eyes moved. The Cold Blood Hall's cultivation was mostly related to blood. However, due to its overbearing and terrifying cultivation, it had once incurred the dissatisfaction of other forces. They had joined forces to pressure Cold Blood Hall, and they had also promised not to attack ordinary people. But now, most of the people who had died here were ordinary people. The three of them looked at each other and slowly walked in the direction where the blood qi was gathering. There's a person there. Zhang Wenjin sent a message to the two. In the center of the town, a middle-aged man in a blood-red robe was sitting cross-legged, and the smell of blood was soaring from his body. Endless blood qi was gathering towards him and entering his body. The bloodthirsty technique. It's an expert from Cold Blood Hall. Let's go. Chu Kuang muttered. His eyes revealed a trace of seriousness as he wanted to retreat. At this moment, the middle-aged man in the blood-red robe suddenly opened his eyes, and a cold and cruel killing intent burst out. Chapter 10-15 1015 Chapter 1015 Fighting the Spiritual God. Three heavens favorites with vigorous qi and blood. Ha! The heavens are on my side. Die! The middle-aged man in the blood-red robe stretched out his hand and clenched his fist in the air. Immediately, 5 blood-red ribbons spread out like 5 soft whips and rolled toward the three of them. Boom! 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 The three of them erupted at the same time. Chu Kuang slashed out two cold blade lights towards two of the blood-red ribbons. Lu Ming cast the prison-suppressing heavenly art and struck out two palms consecutively at the two blood-colored ribbons. Zhang Wenjing, on the other hand, slashed out a sky-blue sword chi and collided with one of the blood-colored ribbons. 5 consecutive explosions were heard. Lu Ming was forced to take more than 10 steps back. Chu Kuang was in a similar state. Zhang Wenjin was in a better state. She was only forced to take 7 or 8 steps back. After all, she was only dealing with one ribbon. A spiritual God realm master. The three of them had a thought at the same time, and their expressions became extremely serious. To be able to repel the three of them with a casual attack, it was definitely an existence in the spiritual God realm. What? The middle-aged man in the blood-red robe was surprised that he did not kill Lu Ming and the other two with one strike. However, he was overjoyed soon after. The three of you can be considered third-class heaven's favorites. Your chi and blood are thick. Kill. The middle-aged man in the blood-red robe laughed and waved his fingers. 10 blood-red ribbons wrapped around Lu Ming and the other two. This ribbon seemed to be light, but it was terrifyingly powerful. As it streaked through the air, it let out a terrifying whistling sound. Let's go, charge out! Chu Kuang shouted. A 7th-level divine bloodline appeared above his head as he immediately executed the bloodline fusion. He did not dare to be careless in the face of a spiritual God realm master, as carelessness would mean death. Zhang Wenjin also performed bloodline fusion. Lu Ming did not use the blood meridian fusion, but he also burst out with 3 bursts of dragon energy. Each attack was extremely terrifying. Boom! Boom! The three of them joined forces and launched a powerful attack, instantly destroying the 10 blood-red ribbons. The three of them were about to fly away. Want to leave? Blood cage. The middle-aged man in the blood-red robe still did not get up. He sat there with his legs crossed and struck out with his hands continuously. Immediately, countless blood-red ribbons appeared in the sky, forming a cage made of blood-red ribbons, locking the three of them inside. The three of them fought back. The blood-red cage shook continuously, but they couldn't break it for a while. Slash! The blood-robed middle-aged man shouted coldly. With a snap of his fingers, 3 terrifying blood-red blade lights slashed towards the three of them. Bang! 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 The three of them tried their best to resist the blood-red blade light, but in the end, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin's bloodlines trembled non-stop and they almost turned back into their human forms. Lu Ming also felt a burning pain all over his body. The qi and blood in his body were in turmoil and he almost vomited blood. Fortunately, Lu Ming's defense was terrifying and he successfully blocked it. Break! Lu Ming continued to increase the power of the prison destructive heaven technique. After a few consecutive punches, the blood-red cage finally collapsed. The three of them quickly rushed out. You want to leave? No way. The blood-robed middle-aged man suddenly stood up. His entire body was filled with blood qi. He raised one hand and slashed out 3 blade auras in a row. They crossed thousands of meters in the void in an instant and slashed toward the 3 people. These 3 blade lights were extremely terrifying, as if they could split the 3 of them in half. Not good. Chu Kuang was shocked and furious. He had a feeling that he would die under this knife. Voila! At this moment, Lu Ming's glabella glowed. The mountain and river diagram flew out and surrounded the 3 of them. Then, it flew forward rapidly. Bang! 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 The 3 saber beams struck the mountain and river diagram but failed to tear it apart. Part of the force was blocked by the mountain and river diagram, but there was still a part of the force that passed through the mountain and river diagram and fell on Lu Ming, Chu Kuang, and Zhang Wenjin. Chu Kuang and Zheng Wenjing turned into their human forms and spat out mouthfuls of blood. Lu Ming's body trembled violently. His skin was cut open, and blood flowed out. Lu Ming endured it and flew forward with Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin. Damn it! The blood-robed middle-aged man growled, but he didn't pursue. Instead, after his expression changed, he continued to sit cross-legged and absorb the blood qi around him. The three of them flew for more than 100,000 miles and landed in a valley. After landing, the three of them sat down cross-legged and began to heal their injuries. In comparison, Lu Ming's injuries were not serious. The dragon scales hidden under his skin blocked most of the force. After 2 hours, Lu Ming had fully recovered and the healing ended. He took a look and found that Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin were still healing. There's still a huge gap between me and a spiritual god realm powerhouse. Lu Ming was deep in thought. The difference between the spirit embryo realm and the spiritual god realm was too great. There was a huge chasm between these two realms. Most importantly, the conditions to break through to the spiritual god realm were too high. Ordinary martial artists or ordinary Heaven's Pride experts could not break through to the spiritual god realm at all. Those who were able to break through to the spiritual god realm were all geniuses among geniuses. This caused the gap between the two realms to be even greater. In reality, the higher the cultivation, the greater the gap between the major cultivation realms would be. It would become more and more terrifying and difficult to cross. Lu Ming was only at the peak of the 8th level spirit embryo realm. It was too difficult and almost impossible for him to cross such a huge distance and fight with a spiritual god realm expert. It might be possible when he attained the great circle of the spirit embryo realm. The middle-aged man in the blood-red robe must have been injured. He's recuperating now. Lu Ming secretly thought. If the other party had not been injured, they might not have been able to rush out. After a few more hours, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin finally opened their eyes and finished their treatment. Thank you for your help this time, Brother Lu. Chu Kuang stood up and expressed his gratitude to Lu Ming. If not for Lu Ming, they would not have been able to escape. Brother Chu is too polite. Lu Ming waved his hands. That cold-blood hall expert should be an expert in the first level of the spiritual god realm. For some reason, he was injured, so he massacred the town and used the blood of the entire town to heal his wounds. We happened to run into him. Chu Kuang analyzed. Lu Ming nodded. Chu Kuang had the same thoughts as him. However, it was too cruel to kill an entire town of ordinary people to heal their injuries. The three of them chatted for a while before leaving and heading in the direction of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. The matters of spiritual god realm powerhouses were not something they could interfere with, and they did not have the ability to do so. After flying for another 2 days, a huge mountain appeared in front of them. The Pillar of Heaven's mountain, as its name suggested, was like a pillar that pierced through the earth, piercing through the clouds. It stood among the many peaks and could be seen with a single glance. Legend had it that the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was a giant mountain formed from the weapon of an ancient supreme expert. There were still 2 days before the battle between Xue Luozi and Yin Bu Pa. The three of them settled down in a small city nearby. In the small town, people came and went, and it was very lively. This is the first battle between second-grade geniuses after the Battle of Karmic Luck. So many people have been attracted. Chu Kuang looked around and sighed. In the small city, the people walking on the streets were all experts. Any one of them had a cultivation above the spirit embryo realm, and there were men and women of all ages. It was obvious that they were here for the battle between the two heavens' favorites. Chapter 1016. 1016 The Five Great Beauties of Central Continent. The three of them found an inn to stay in and waited for the battle to begin. Lu Ming made the best use of his time to comprehend the earth concept while tempering his essential core and concept at the same time. 2 days passed by in a flash. After 2 days, countless figures flew toward the pillar of heaven's mountains. Lu Ming and the other two blended into the crowd and arrived near the pillar of heaven's mountain. When they arrived, they realized that the area was already surrounded by people. At a glance, there were no less than 10,000 people. From this, one could see the influence of a second-grade heaven's favorite in the central continent. The central continent was vast, it was 7 to 8 times the size of the East Baron. It was filled with talented people and experts. However, in such a vast land, how many second-grade geniuses were there? Below the 5 young tyrants were the second-grade heaven's favorites. There were only 20 of them, and it was rare to see one. In the Battle of Providence, most people were not qualified to watch the battle. That was why so many people had come this time. They all wanted to see what level a second-grade heaven's favorite had reached and what terrifying level his battle prowess had reached. In the crowd, there were old men and a few youths in their teens. These youths were the most excited. They were the younger generation and had missed the Battle of Providence. They wanted to see how powerful the heaven's favorites who were half a generation older than them were. This would motivate them. So many experts. Chu Kuang's eyes swept across the crowd. He discovered many heaven's favorites who were on par with him. They were third-grade heaven's favorites. There were also some who were not third-grade heaven's favorites but were still extraordinary. For example, Hai Ziming, Wu Kong, Ling Yungkong, and Lu Ming from the floating mountain. There were even a few elders standing in the sky, exuding an astonishing aura. They were clearly spiritual god realm existences. This battle had even attracted the attention of spiritual god realm existences. Suddenly, demonic chi rushed to the sky. A black-robed young man stepped through the air and attracted everyone's attention. Junyu, the Junyu of Demon Mountain. Someone exclaimed when they saw the young man. Demon Mountain Junyu is also here. Zhang Wenjin and Chu Kuang also exclaimed. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He could not help but look at Junyu carefully. During this period of travel, Lu Ming had also inquired Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjing about many things regarding the central continent. Chu Kuang had talked the most about the heaven's pride of the younger generation. Lu Ming had some understanding of the heaven's favorites of the central continent. Of course, it was mainly the top 5 young warriors, 20 or so second-grade heaven's favorites, and the various overlords. Demon Mountain was also one of the overlords of Central Continent, and Junyu was one of the 22nd-grade heaven's favorites. He's indeed very strong and terrifying. He's definitely a heaven's favorite on the level of an emperor god. Lu Ming sized up Junyue and pondered in his heart. Junyue gave him a very dangerous feeling. It was obvious that the battle between Yin Bupo and Blood Luo Zi had attracted the attention of heaven's favorites of the same level. Junyu stood in the air with his hands behind his back. He looked straight ahead as if no one could attract his attention. He didn't even look at the spiritual god realm experts as if he didn't care at all. Indeed, with his talent, it was only a matter of time before he broke through to the spiritual god realm. In the future, he would definitely reach the Supreme Being realm. His goal was to become an emperor. How could he care about ordinary spiritual gods? The crowd continued to wait. The pure space spirit. The pure space spirit of the floating mountain. Suddenly, the crowd let out another cry. Junior sister Kong Ling is here. Chu Kuang's eyes lit up as he looked at the sky. A young woman wearing a long, watercolored veil was stepping on the air and approaching. Her entire body was filled with water vapor. She looked like she was in her 20s. Her beauty was unparalleled and could cause the downfall of a country. Her graceful figure was faintly discernible in the water vapor. She was barefooted, and her 2 jade-like feet were like the most beautiful piece of art in the world. With every step she took, a cloud would appear in the sky. She was walking on the cloud as she walked over. The scene was silent, as if everyone's eyes were attracted by this woman. So she's the pure spatial spirit. As expected, she's peerless in beauty. Lu Ming could not help but sigh in admiration. Chu Kuang was ranked second in the Floating Mountain sect, while the number one heaven's favorite of the Floating Mountain sect was Jing Kongling. She was a woman with terrifying talent. At the same time, she was also a second-grade heaven's favorite. She was as famous as Jun Yu and Yin Bupo. Furthermore, Jing Kongling was one of the 5 great beauties of the Central Continent. Everyone in the Central Continent knew her. For the past few days, Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin had mentioned her to Lu Ming many times. Lu Ming had long been curious about this unparalleled beauty. Lu Ming could not help but compare all the women he had met with the pure and ethereal spirit. He realized that only Xian Yanqing could compare to the pure and ethereal spirit. The others, such as Mulan and Qiu Yu, were slightly inferior. Jing Kongling, I didn't expect you to be attracted to this battle. Junyue's gaze finally moved as he looked towards Jing Kongling. A fiery light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Didn't you come too? The pure void spirit spoke softly. His voice was calm, and when it entered one's ears, it gave one a very comfortable feeling. It was as if it could calm one's restless heart. Just like her name, she was like an ethereal fairy, untainted by even a speck of dust. Brother Jun, Sister Kongling, you're early. A sweet and clear voice was heard. Not far away, another woman stepped on the air and arrived. This woman looked younger than Jing Kongling, but her looks were not any worse than Jing Kongling's. Her little face was a little pale, but she had a kind of sickly beauty that made people want to go up and protect her. Medicine King's Valley's goddess Tan Xiang. Many people widened their eyes. Another second-grade heaven's favorite, and one of the 5 beauties of the Central Continent. Many people felt that they were going crazy. They felt that this trip was too worth it. This time, the main characters of the 2 duels had yet to arrive, and there were already peerless geniuses who had arrived. Even 2 of the 5 beauties of the Central Continent were here. It's worth it, it's too worth it. Many people have crossed hundreds of millions of miles to see one of the 5 great beauties, but they can't even get it. Today, they can see 2 of the 5 great beauties. What's not worth it? Fairy Tan Xiang. Chu Kuang's eyes also lit up as he stared at Goddess Tan Xiang like a lecherous pervert, causing Zhang Wenjin, who was standing beside him, to feel quite displeased. In fact, Zhang Wenjin was also a rare beauty, but compared to Jing Kongling and Goddess Tan Xiang, she was far behind. Sister Tan Xiang, why are you here? The pristine void spirit stepped forward and came to the side of Goddess Tan Xiang. The 2 of them stood together. Almost everyone's eyes fell on the 2 women. Many people's eyes were burning with passion, but no one dared to flirt or even hit on them. Although the 2 women were beautiful, they were also heaven's pride experts whose names shook the world. They were extremely terrifying. Whoever dared to flirt with them would die without even knowing how they died. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect that the 2 fairies would come. This Yin is truly honored. A loud laugh was heard. In the distance, a bolt of lightning flashed. The next moment, a young man in purple feather clothes appeared on the top of Sky Pillar Mountain. This young man had cold eyes, an aquiline nose, and extremely sharp eyes that flashed with lightning. Yin Bupo. Someone called out the person's name. Finally, one of the 2 people in today's battle had appeared. Chapter 1017. 1017 The battle between second-grade heaven's favorites. Yin Bupo, why don't you look in the mirror? Do you think the 2 fairies came for you? From another direction, a sneer could be heard. With a flash of blood-red light, a young man in a blood-red robe appeared on the other side of the pillar of heaven's mountain. This young man's face was slightly pale, but he was very handsome and gave off a feminine feeling. Master Shui Luo, you look like you're half dead. Are the 2 fairies here to see you? Yin Bupo sneered. Each of the 5 beauties of the Central Continent was not only beautiful but also talented. Naturally, they had countless suitors, including many second-grade heaven's favorites and even the 5 young tycoons. There had been rumors before that Yin Bupo and Blood Luo Zi were both suitors of goddess Tan Xiang. At this moment, the 2 heaven's favorites arrived. Everyone's eyes finally moved away from Jing Kongling and goddess Tan Xiang to Yin Bupo and Master Xue Luo. Today, the 2 of them were about to engage in a world-shaking battle. Lu Ming also looked at the 2 of them. Whether the second-grade heavens pride experts of the central continent were on the same level as the Emperor God would soon be known. Humph, Yin Bupo, you managed to escape with your life in the last battle of Providence. Today, I'll kill you completely. Xue Luo Zi sneered. Ha, just you. You're the one who will die today. Yin Bupo sneered. He let out a long cry and turned into a huge godly eagle. The godly eagle was covered with terrifying lightning power. Yin Bupo was not a human, but a demon. The Sky Eagle Castle was the demon clan's power. Most of them were all kinds of eagle-type demon beasts. Of course, there were also many other bird-type demon beasts, but most of them were eagle-type demon beasts. It was said that the Lord of the Sky Eagle Castle was a powerful eagle emperor. Yin Bupo had the bloodline of the divine beast, the mysterious thunder sacred eagle, and the concentration of the bloodline was extremely shocking. Boom! Although Xue Luo Zi spoke casually, he did not dare to underestimate his opponent. His aura burst out and a blood-red light shot up into the sky. Kill! Yin Bupo roared and flapped his wings. The terrifying power of thunder gathered and turned into a thunder sword, slashing at Blood Luo Zi. Blood River Divine Blade. Xue Luo Zi clenched his fist in the air. Endless blood light gathered and turned into a blood-red long blade. He shouted and slashed out. The blood-red blade light slashed down and the void rippled like water. It collided with the lightning sword. Boom! 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 The sword chi and saber radiance swept in all directions. Many of the weaker cultivators were shocked and retreated. Lu Ming, Chu Kuang, and Zhang Wenjin stood still and observed the scene carefully. Yin Bupo and Xue Luo Zi exchanged dozens of moves in the blink of an eye. Blood Luo Zi, I haven't seen you for more than half a year. You haven't improved much. Yin Bupo sneered. It's more than enough to suppress you. Xue Luo Zi sneered. Is that so? Yin Bupo sneered. He flapped his wings and let out a long hiss. The blood in his body boiled, and the sky was filled with lightning. The endless lightning seemed to fill the sky. Buzz! Yin Bupo's wings seemed to have turned into blades of lightning, cutting through everything and slashing towards Blood Luo Zi. The bloodthirsty swirled. Xue Luo Zi let out a long cry. His blood chi soared into the sky, and a semicircular blood light cover spread out. A terrifying devouring power spread out. Even from a distance, many people could feel their blood stirring as if it was going to leave their bodies. Cold Blood Hall's bloodthirsty technique. Chu Kuang's face was solemn. Lu Ming's expression changed. He felt that this bloodthirsty technique was somewhat similar to the 9 dragons' devouring power. However, the bloodthirsty technique only targeted blood and was far less domineering than the 9 dragons' devouring power. Boom! Yin Bupo's blade of lightning slashed at the blood-colored light screen, creating a deafening sound. However, he was also affected by the bloodthirsty technique. The blood in his body was restless, and his combat power was affected. He could not use his full strength. Squeak! An ear-piercing sound was heard. A giant bat appeared above Blood Luo Zi's head. This bat was blood-red all over, and its eyes were extremely cold, filled with a bloodthirsty glow. Blood-winged sky bat was an extremely terrifying godly beast. Obviously, Xue Luo Zi's bloodline was a blood-winged sky bat. Around the blood-winged sky bat, there were 8 bright and dazzling chakras. Divine level rank 8 bloodline. The bloodline level of Blood Luozi was the same as that of the Divine Emperor. Shui Luozi performed bloodline fusion and turned into a blood-winged bat, fighting with Yin Bupo. A terrifying force shot out and the space kept shaking as if it would be torn apart at any time. It was completely distorted. The terrifying force spread out for thousands of miles. Many mountains were swept by the force and turned into dust in an instant. However, most of the energy landed on the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. It seemed like the Pillar of Heaven's mountains was really made from the weapons of ancient experts. The terrifying energy landed on the Pillar of Heaven's mountains, but it was not damaged at all. At most, it only left a few marks on it. In the blink of an eye, the two of them exchanged over 100 moves, and there was still no clear winner. Heavens, so strong, too strong. Is this the combat strength of a second-grade Heaven's favorite? An old man at the great circle of the spirit embryo realm gasped in shock. He had a feeling that with his cultivation of the great circle of the spirit embryo realm, not to mention exchanging blows with the two, even if he were to charge forward and get within 100 meters of the two, he would be ground into pieces by the terrifying energy. A martial artist at the great circle of the spirit embryo realm would not be able to resist at all. Their cultivation should be at the peak of the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm, but their combat strength is too terrifying. They're probably close to the spirit god realm. Even if they can't really fight with a spiritual god, they won't be too far off. If they break through to the perfected spirit embryo realm, they might really be able to fight with a spiritual god realm powerhouse. Terrifying. A spirit embryo that can battle a spirit god. Too terrifying. The onlookers discussed as they watched. They were extremely shocked. Even a few spiritual god realm powerhouses had grave expressions. He's indeed powerful. He's definitely a heaven's favorite on the same level as an emperor god. Lu Ming pondered in his heart, his gaze a little solemn. Now he was sure that the second-grade heaven's pride experts of the central continent must be at the level of sovereign gods. It was amazing that there were more than 20 of such heaven's pride experts. I wonder what realm the emperor god has reached. Lu Ming thought to himself. Half a year ago, the emperor god's cultivation was at the peak of the 8th level spirit embryo realm. Now that more than half a year had passed, it was normal for the emperor god to reach the peak of the 9th level spirit embryo realm. It was even possible for him to reach the perfected spirit embryo realm. If they met, he would still be a great enemy of Lu Ming. With my current combat strength, am I a match for them? Lu Ming was secretly measuring his combat strength. In the War of Providence, Lu Ming had suppressed the Emperor God by combining the Inscription Tao and the Tao of Inscription. However, the Emperor God had not been defeated one-sided. Now that Lu Ming's refinement path and martial arts were separated, his combat power was slightly weaker. However, as compared to the Battle of Providence, Lu Ming had cultivated the water concept. The fusion of 5 types of concepts had an astonishing power, much stronger than 4 types of concepts. Even without the Tao of Inscription, Lu Ming's combat strength was still powerful. He was confident that he could suppress his opponent in a battle of the same level. However, they were in the central continent now. In order to prevent his identity from being exposed, Lu Ming could not use some of his techniques. He could not fully unleash his dragon power either, which greatly reduced his combat strength. In addition, Lu Ming's current cultivation was only at the peak of the 8th level spirit embryo realm. If he were to encounter either Blood Luo Zi or Yin Bupo, he would not be a match for them. I have to improve my cultivation as soon as possible. If I reach the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm and reach the same level as them, I won't be afraid of them even if I can't fight the bloodline fusion. Lu Ming kept thinking. Chapter 1018. 1018 9th level spirit embryo realm. The heavens and earth trembled continuously. Half of the sky was filled with lightning while the other half was filled with blood chi. The lightning and the blood-red light kept clashing and clashing. No one could see Yin Bupo and Shui Luozi's figures at all. They could only see light and shadow intertwining. This battle lasted for 2 hours. The lightning and blood light in the sky dissipated at the same time. 2 figures stood on one side of the sky, gasping for breath. Their eyes were sharp and serious as they stared at each other. It was a draw. It was said that in the Battle of Providence, the 2 of them exchanged thousands of moves and ended up in a draw. Today, it was the same. Blood Luozi, I didn't expect you to have some skills. You're lucky today. Yin Bupo said coldly. I should be the one saying that. I'll spare your life today. Shui Luozi also sneered. The 2 of them didn't continue to fight. They had exchanged 1,000 moves just now, and the 2 of them had used up a lot of their energy. Moreover, there were many experts around them, so they had to leave some strength to guard against someone who might attack them in the dark. It seems like they won't fight again this time. It's a draw again. Shui Luozi and Yin Bupo are really strong opponents. That's true. Sky Eagle Castle and Cold Blood Hall are close to each other. The 2 forces have been fighting each other for a long time. Yin Bupo and Master Blood Luo have been fighting since they were young, but there has never been a winner between them. But this is a good thing. With a lifelong opponent, their progress is amazing. It's good to have an opponent. This is a golden era with countless geniuses. In the past, geniuses like Yin Bupo and Master Blood Luo would definitely be invincible. But today, there are more than 20 of them, and there are even the stronger top 5 young warriors. Many people in the surroundings couldn't help but sigh. There were too many Heaven's favorites in this generation. Second-grade Heaven's favorites like Yin Bupo and Shui Luozi had the chance to break through to the martial royal realm. In the past, it was considered good if there were 2 or 3 of them in each generation. But in this generation, there were over 20 of them, and even the more powerful 5 overlords. Even the Eastern Barren Territory, Southern Nether, Northern Plains, and Western Desert were filled with talents. Heaven's Pride experts were like clouds, and all of them were competing with each other. This was a brilliant golden age. Everyone knew that this battle was over, and some people were preparing to leave. Everyone, Tan Xiang is preparing to host the Alchemy King's banquet in 7 days. I'd like to invite all of you to have a drink and discuss Tao. Would you all be willing to give this little girl some face? At this moment, a clear and melodious voice sounded. It was Fairy Tan Xiang. Everyone's eyes lit up. Ha! It's a once-in-a-thousand-years opportunity for Goddess Tan Xiang to personally host the Pill King banquet. How can I not go? Demon Mountain Jun Yu was the first to speak, his eyes shining. Many thanks, Brother Jun. Fairy Tan Xiang bowed slightly. It's our honor to be able to attend the Pill King banquet organized by Goddess Tan Xiang. As long as Fairy doesn't mind, I'll definitely pay you a visit. The others all rushed to speak, hoping to attract Goddess Tan Xiang's attention. Then this little sister thanks everyone, this little sister will take her leave first. Everyone can stay in the Pill City for the time being, and head to the Pill King Academy in 7 days. With that said, Fairy Tan Xiang bowed slightly, then stepped on the air and left. After that, Jing Kongling also turned around and left, like a fairy in the clouds. Yin Bupo, we'll fight another day. Shui Luozi turned into a ray of blood light and left. Yin Bupo laughed coldly and also left. After that, the others also dispersed. Brother Chu, what is the Pill King banquet? Lu Ming asked Chu Kuang. The people of the Valley of the Medicine Masters are all alchemists who mainly refine pills. The pills of the Valley of the Medicine Masters are well known all over the world, and some of the outstanding heroes of the Valley of the Medicine Masters will, from time to time, melt their proudest pills into fine wine and invite the world's heroes to come and have a taste, and also make friends with the world's heroes. So, although the Valley of the Medicine Masters is not an overlord force today, its influence is still extremely terrifying. Chu Kuang explained. Lu Ming nodded. This tradition was very special. Let's go to the Pill City first. The Pill King Institution is in the Pill City, Chu Kuang said. Immediately, the three of them flew towards the City of Pills. On the way, Lu Ming learned more about the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The Valley of the Medicine Masters had been an overlord force in the distant past, but now, because they did not have an emperor to hold down the fort, they had stepped down from the throne of overlord force. However, their strength was still very terrifying and could not be underestimated. There was more than one supreme martial artist in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, and they were good at alchemy and had good relations with the major forces. Their potential was no small matter. The City of Alchemy was built in the vicinity of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. It was very crowded and lively here. The Valley of the Medicine Masters sold all kinds of elixirs here and also bought all kinds of spiritual herbs and flowers, so it attracted a large number of chambers of commerce to sell and purchase elixirs. The Pill City was not far from the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. In just half a day, the three arrived at the Pill City. So many spirit herbs, so many spirit herbs. Dandan had appeared on Lu Ming's shoulder again, her eyes darting around. On both sides of the city's streets, there were spirit herb shops. The rich medicinal fragrance of the elixir shops came from all directions, which made people feel refreshed. No wonder Dandan was looking around. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin glanced at Dandan. They thought that this little turtle was quite interesting. Brother Chu, Miss Wenjing, how about we find a place to stay? Lu Ming said. Lu Ming wanted to find a place to cultivate in seclusion. All right. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin nodded and the three of them found an inn to stay in. In the room of the inn, Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat and his figure disappeared. Only the mountain and river diagram was left floating in the room. In the mountain and river diagram, Lu Ming sat cross-legged on a mountain peak. With a wave of his hand, a large pile of raw gemstones appeared around him. I'll break through to the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm with the Ori rocks. Lu Ming's eyes flashed. The spiritual god expert from Cold Blood Hall had made Lu Ming realize the huge gap between him and a spiritual god expert. This time, he was under a lot of pressure when he saw the battle between Xue Luozi and Yin Bupo. Now, he had many restrictions and his cultivation was not high enough. If he were to fight against heaven's favorites like Blood Luozi and Yin Bupo, he would most likely not be their match. Hence, he needed to increase his strength urgently. Originally, he did not plan to use the raw gemstones to improve his cultivation because the consumption of raw gemstones would definitely be terrifying. He did not have many raw gemstones on him now. He had wanted to keep them as a backup, but he could not care so much now. Improving his strength was the most important thing. Roar! The bloodline of the 9 dragons emerged and swallowed. A terrifying devouring power burst out, shattering tens of thousands of raw gemstones. The majestic original chi was devoured by the bloodline of the 9 dragons and began to be refined rapidly. Circulating the true war dragon technique, the origin chi was constantly refined and transformed into true essence. The true essence gathered in the spirit embryo and was constantly condensed. The spirit embryo became more and more solid, and its size became smaller and smaller. After refining tens of thousands of raw gemstones, another tens of thousands of gemstones were refined. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. In 3 days, Lu Ming had refined more than 300,000 raw gemstones. Soon, with a sharp glint in his eyes, he continued to refine. Another day passed and he had refined nearly 100,000 raw gemstones. Boom! Something seemed to have been broken through. Lu Ming's aura grew and the essential core in his body roared. It was several times more powerful than before. His cultivation broke through and reached the early stage of the 9th level spirit embryo realm. Chapter 10-19 1019 Chapter 1019 Spatial Stone. Who? At this moment, Lu Ming finally opened his eyes, a look of satisfaction on his face. However, the consumption of the raw gemstones made him feel a little pained. He had refined a total of 400,000 raw gemstones. This was too shocking. However, after his cultivation broke through to the 9th level of the spirit embryo realm, Lu Ming's combat strength had increased by a large margin. His vital essence was vast and abundant, and the prison-suppressing heaven technique could be more powerful. I wonder if I can fight Yin Bupo and Blood Luo Zi with my current combat power. Lu Ming's heart stirred. Shui Luozi and Yin Bupo were both at the peak of the 9th level spirit embryo realm, while Lu Ming was at the early stage of the 9th level spirit embryo realm. This was similar to his battle with the Emperor God in the Battle of Providence. However, at that time, Lu Ming had to use all his means and the array to suppress the Emperor God. However, Lu Ming did not have the Tao of inscription, but he had integrated the concept of water. If Lu Ming could use all his skills and perform the blood meridian fusion, he was confident that he could suppress Shui Luo Zi or Yin Bupo. However, if he could not perform the blood meridian fusion, Lu Ming was not confident. But at least, Lu Ming was confident that he would not lose. There's still 3 days before the Pill King banquet, let's go to Pill City first. Lu Ming stood up and walked out of the room. He sensed that Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin's rooms were empty. They must have gone out for a walk. The city of pills was like a huge commercial city. There were shops everywhere and there were countless types of spiritual herbs and pills. It was an eye-opener for Lu Ming. In some shops, one could even buy level 8 medicinal pills, but the price was terrifying. In some places, stalls were set up. The stall owners would sell some strange things. Some might be rare treasures, while others might just be waste. Such a place was called the Taba area. It was mainly a test of luck. If one was lucky, they might be able to buy something of high value. Of course, one also needed to have good eyesight. This place had attracted a lot of people. There were many people on the street. Lu Ming strolled among the crowd, looking to the east and west. On her shoulder, Dandan's eyes were also looking around. Upon arriving here, Dandan became spirited and declared that with his eyesight, no treasure could escape his eyes. Unfortunately, he didn't find anything after walking around. The things here were strange. Some of the so-called spirit herbs were just weeds on the side of the road and were used to fool people. Some of the abandoned spirit weapons were used as battle weapons from the ancient times. Some people even took a few stones and said that there were rare treasures in the stones. They were also sold at a high price. Once this was sold, it would be a huge profit. That is. Lu Ming, that piece of purple jade in front, yes, the purple jade that the chick is buying. Buy it. It's very useful. Lu Ming was looking around when Dandan's voice suddenly rang in his ears. She looked very excited. Lu Ming's spirit was lifted and he looked forward. 2 young women were standing in front of a stall. One of the young women was taking a purple jade from the stall owner. The purple jade that Dandan was talking about was this one. That purple jade is very ordinary. Could it be a treasure? Lu Ming was surprised. You can't compare to my judgment. Lu Ming, you'll definitely make a big profit if you buy it. Dandan shouted. Lu Ming no longer hesitated. He strode forward to the front of the stall and pretended to take a casual glance at the purple jade in the woman's hand. He said casually, This piece of purple jade is not bad. I can buy it to make a jade pendant for my sister. This big brother, how much is this purple jade? The stall owner was a middle-aged man. He smiled and said, Young master, you're late. This purple jade has just been bought by this lady. You bought it? Lu Ming felt that it was a pity. He then sized up the young woman. The young woman was very beautiful. She was in her 20s and could be considered a rare beauty. Behind her, there was another woman. From her appearance, she should be a maidservant. Miss, can you let me have this purple jade? Lu Ming cupped his fists and said. Hey, my lady bought this piece of purple jade first. Why should she let you have it? The maidservant behind the woman called out first. It's nothing. I just saw that this purple jade is quite beautiful and wanted to buy it to make a jade pendant for my younger sister. Since this young lady has bought it first, then this one will not take it from her. Lu Ming smiled, cupped his fists, and was about to leave. Although it was a pity to miss it, Lu Ming would not take it by force since it had already been bought. Young master, please wait. At this moment, the young woman called out and Lu Ming stopped. Actually, I only bought this purple jade because I thought it looked good. It's not of much use to me. Since you like it so much, I'll give it to you. The young lady stepped forward and handed the purple jade to Lu Ming. Lu Ming was rather surprised and did not pick it up. Brat, quickly accept it. If you don't, you'll regret it. Dandan constantly transmitted her voice to Lu Ming. Lu Ming pondered for a moment and reached out to take the purple jade. I'm Lu Shaoqing. Thank you for giving me this jade. I wonder what your name is. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely repay you for this jade. I am Zhou Xan. Young Master Lu is too polite. The young woman smiled. So it's Miss Shou. Miss Shou is also here to participate in the Pill King banquet? Lu Ming asked. That's right. It seems like young Master Lu has the same purpose as me. Zhou Xian smiled and looked around. After that, the two of them chatted for a while before Lu Ming took his leave. This was because Dandan was urging Lu Ming to go back and cut open the purple jade. There would definitely be a surprise. Miss, why did you give that purple jade to that kid? After Lu Ming left, the maidservant said unhappily. Silly girl, what is this place? This time, there are quite a few young talents from the Pill City who have come to attend the banquet. This man looks extraordinary, so he might be a heaven's chosen. Why not use a useless piece of purple jade to make friends with a heaven's chosen? Zhou Xian smiled. Miss is wise. The servant girl flattered. Very soon, Lu Ming returned to the inn. After entering his room, he entered the mountain and river diagram. His palm glowed, and the purple jade appeared in his hand. This piece of purple jade looked very ordinary. Could it be that there was really a rare treasure in the purple jade? Lu Ming, cut this purple jade open. Be careful. Dandan instructed. Lu Ming stretched out his finger. His essential core spread out and condensed into a sharp sword, slowly cutting toward the purple jade. The purple jade was about the size of 2 fists. Lu Ming cut it carefully. When he was halfway through, a faint milky white halo spread out. There was really something in the purple jade. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He slowly cut the purple jade around him, leaving behind a milky white jade the size of a longan in his hand. What kind of jade is this? Lu Ming was a little curious. This piece of jade looked ordinary and did not look like a rare treasure at all. Brat, is the dimensional stone considered a rare treasure? Dandan grinned. What? This is a storage elemental stone. Lu Ming's eyes widened. Chapter 1020. 1020 Chapter 1020 Stealing Medicine. Lu Ming was overjoyed to find that it was a Nanyuan stone. The Nanyuan stone was a very mysterious treasure because it could store a warrior's true yuan. A warrior only needed to put their true qi into the storage yuan stone in advance and store it. When they needed to use it, they could directly absorb the true qi from the storage yuan stone, because it was originally the warrior's own true qi, so there was no need to convert it, and it could be used directly. This way, he didn't have to worry about his true essence being exhausted. The Nanyuan stone was a rare treasure for a warrior. Sometimes, it could save one's life. Moreover, the Nanyuan stone could be used for a long time. It was rarely seen in the market, but once it appeared, its price would be terrifyingly high. Lu Ming had never expected that there would be a Nanyuan stone in the purple jade. I wonder if this yuan storing stone can withstand my true yuan. Lu Ming pondered. There was a limit to the amount of true essence that different energy storage stones could store. It was impossible for an ordinary Nanyuan stone to store a king's vital essence. If a king's vital essence was poured in, the Nanyuan stone would probably explode. The amount of true yuan that different energy storage stones could store was different. I'll try. Holding the Na yuan stone in his hand, Lu Ming continuously transferred his essential core into the Na yuan stone. As expected, the moment the essential core entered the Na yuan stone, it was stored in the Na yuan stone. In a short while, Lu Ming's essential core was almost completely absorbed into the Nanyuan stones. It's great that he can withstand it. Lu Ming was overjoyed. In this way, the essential core that Lu Ming could use had greatly increased. The power of the prison-suppressing heaven technique was now equivalent to the middle level of a low-grade divine-level martial arts technique. The amount of vital essence it consumed was too terrifying. Lu Ming had not dared to unleash his full power previously. Otherwise, the vital essence in his body would be drained dry in an instant. However, Lu Ming was not afraid now. Even if he was drained in one go, he could replenish his essential core in an instant with the Nanyuan stones. In this case, Lu Ming had an additional trump card. Now that he was using all of his strength to unleash the prison-suppressing heaven technique, even though he could not unleash its full power, it was still much stronger than when he could only unleash a few levels of its power carefully. Next, Lu Ming took out the rough stone and started to recover his essential core. When his quintessential essence had fully recovered, Lu Ming continued to channel his quintessential essence into the Na yuan stone. He predicted that this energy-storing stone should be able to withstand the true essence of his first-level spiritual god realm. In other words, before Lu Ming broke through to the second level of the spiritual god realm, this Nanyuan stone would be his trump card. Lu Ming only stopped after he had channeled his essential core 5 times. Quintessential essence of 5 times was equivalent to 5 times his quintessential essence, which was enough for the time being. After he had recovered his essential core, Lu Ming walked out of the inn. There was still one more day before the start of the Pill Emperor's banquet. More and more people were gathering in Pill City. Other than the people who had watched the battle between Yin Bupo and Blood Luo Zi, there were also some other people who had rushed over after hearing the news. Of course, most of them were from the younger generation. Because the one hosting the Pill King's banquet was Goddess Tan Xiang, it was only natural that the young people would be gathered here. It wasn't good for the older generation to mix around with these young people. Lu Ming strolled around with Dandan, hoping to find something. Unfortunately, they did not find anything after a long round. Lu Ming laughed at himself. He knew that he was too greedy. He was really lucky to have gotten the Nanyuan stones the last time. He could not help but feel apologetic towards Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian was the one who bought it first and then gave it to Lu Ming. Gradually, Lu Ming strolled to the north of the Pill City. There were fewer and fewer buildings here, and instead, there were many hills. I smell a fragrance. It's a strong medicinal fragrance. There are spiritual herbs. Dandan's nose suddenly twitched. Then, she rushed down from Lu Ming's shoulder and ran forward at an extremely fast speed. This guy. Lu Ming was speechless. He chased after her. After crossing a hill, they came to a canyon. Dandan slowed down a little, rushed left and right, and rushed into the valley. Lu Ming furrowed his eyebrows. This valley was filled with inscription formations. Now that Lu Ming did not have mental energy fire, he could not break the array. However, even if they could not break the formation, they might not be able to stop Lu Ming. Although Lu Ming did not have a mental energy fire, he still had his knowledge of the inscription Tao. Moreover, he could also feel it as his second body's understanding of the inscription Tao increased. During this period of time, he had been cultivating at Mount Liangyi and his progress had been amazing. The second body did not have any distracting thoughts. Coupled with the blessing of providence, its comprehension had increased tenfold. As it focused on cultivation, its progress was much faster than Lu Ming's main body. Its understanding of the Tao of inscription was improving every day. Therefore, although Lu Ming did not have a mental energy fire, he still had a good eye. Although the array in the canyon was brilliant, Lu Ming could still see the flaws in it. After pondering for a moment, Lu Ming stepped forward, then backward, suddenly left, then suddenly right, and headed into the valley. Not long after, they arrived at the depths of the valley. In the depths of the valley, Lu Ming saw an herbal field. There were many kinds of spirit herbs planted in the herbal field. The herbal fragrance was extremely rich and wafted in the valley. These spiritual herbs are all level 7. Lu Ming was shocked. He realized that the spiritual herbs in the herbal field were almost all level 7 spiritual herbs and there were at least 1,000 of them. At this time, Dandan was rolling around in the medicinal field, her eyes shining with excitement. Her claws were constantly grabbing the spirit herbs in the medicinal field and stuffing them into her mouth. Dandan, hurry up! Lu Ming urged. It was impossible for this large herbal field to be ownerless in the city of pills. It must have been planted by an expert from the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Even Lu Ming was a little apprehensive to steal other people's spiritual herbs in their territory. Like a tornado sweeping away the clouds, Dandan quickly stuffed hundreds of spiritual herbs into her mouth, all of which were upper level 7. This fellow had sharp eyes and picked the best ones. Where did this little thief come from, daring to steal medicine here? Suddenly, a delicate shout was heard and a beautiful figure rushed out of the valley. In the air, inscriptions filled the air and a great formation glowed. Rays of light entangled Dandan. Not good. Dandan was shocked. She sprinted frantically, her 4 limbs retracted into the turtle shell. The turtle shell danced in the air, dodging the formations one by one, and flew toward Lu Ming. Sandalwood incense. Lu Ming was shocked to see that beautiful figure. The beautiful figure in the valley was actually the fairy Sandalwood, Moose Sandalwood. Lu Ming's body glowed and his physical body changed rapidly, turning into another appearance. He grabbed Dandan and retreated quickly. Stay here. Fairy Tan Xiang's jade-like hands danced and the mental energy fire between her brows glowed. On the ground around Lu Ming, formations kept appearing. Lu Ming's eyes glimmered. He swept his gaze across the array and took a few steps forward. Each step was very mysterious. He stepped on the weak point of the array and retreated quickly. In a few breaths, Lu Ming retreated 1,000 meters. Fairy Tan Xiang stopped, a look of surprise in her beautiful eyes. She did not continue to attack or pursue. Seizing the opportunity, Lu Ming flashed at top speed and soon left the canyon, disappearing from sight. Strange, it's really strange. There's clearly no trace of mental energy fire, but he can see the weakness of the array with a glance and thus avoid the attack of the array and retreat calmly. It's really strange. This is the first time I've encountered such a thing. Fairy Tan Xiang whispered, her eyes filled with curiosity. This was also the reason why she didn't pursue him. Chapter 1021. 1021 Chapter 1021 Paragons attending the banquet. She could sense very clearly that Lu Ming definitely did not have any mental energy fire. This was rare in itself. Most martial artists would cultivate mental energy fire as an auxiliary martial art. However, she did not sense any mental energy fire on Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming's eyesight was extremely terrifying. He could see through the weakness of the array at once. This was something that even she could not do better than this. That was why she was even more curious. You tried to hide your appearance and change your appearance at the first moment to fool me. Unfortunately, it's not that easy to fool me. Fairy Tanxiang pursed her lips and smiled flirtatiously. Lu Ming rushed out of the canyon and heaved a long sigh of relief. With his current combat power, he was not afraid of Goddess Tanxiang, but he was in the wrong after all. This was the City of Pills, the territory of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. If he was discovered by a rank 8 alchemist from the Valley of the Medicine Masters, he would not be able to bear the consequences. You rascal, I'm not going to care about you in the future. Lu Ming glanced at Dandan. Kid, what did you say? Why didn't you say that when I found a treasure like the Na Yuan pill for you? Dandan glared at Lu Ming, gritting her teeth. Lu Ming was silent and speechless. Indeed, Dandan had been of great help to Lu Ming at times. However, she was also the one who caused trouble at times. Kid, I'll recover better with the spiritual medicine. When I've fully recovered, I'll be able to dominate the world. At that time, I'll be able to kill even stronger experts with a single slap, let alone martial emperors. At that time, there will be countless people who want to curry favor with me, and it won't be your turn. Dandan said proudly. Oh. How long will it take for you to fully recover? What level of spirit medicine do you need? Lu Ming said. I don't know. As for the spirit herbs, if you want me to fully recover, mere spiritual medicine is of no use. You need stronger treasures, such as saint medicine. Dandan muttered. Go to hell. Lu Ming looked at him with disdain. What was the use of saying so much? Sacred medicine. What was a sacred medicine? It was a legendary supreme treasure medicine, an unparalleled treasure. Even if an emperor saw it, they would be envious. In terms of level, it was an item that completely surpassed emperors. Above level 9 spirit herbs were saint herbs. The man and the turtle bickered as they returned to the inn. Lu Ming threw Dandan into the mountain and river diagram and continued cultivating. The next morning, Lu Ming, Chu Kuang, and Zhang Wenjin headed for the Alchemy King's department. The Pill King Institution was located on the west side of the city. It was very famous and everyone in the city knew about it. There were people from Medicine King's Valley standing guard at the entrance of the Pill King's Academy. However, after Chu Kuang revealed his identity, he naturally didn't stop the three of them from entering. The fragrance of herbs assailed the nostrils of the Alchemy King's department. Every blade of grass, every tree, and every flower was a spirit herb. Many of the buildings were built like pill furnaces. They were ancient and simple, filled with the aura of time. There were butterflies and bees flying in the flowers, collecting pollen for the spiritual flowers. These colorful butterflies and bees were not ordinary insects. They were all exotic species. For example, each of those bees was a rank 5 demonic beast, equivalent to a king's realm cultivator. The honey they produced in the future would be a precious medicine worth cities. Entering the Alchemy King Academy and smelling the medicinal fragrance, it made one feel refreshed and breathing smoothly. If an ordinary person were to enter this place and live in such an environment for a few days, they would definitely not get sick and live to 100 years old. Lu Ming clicked his tongue in wonder. The Valley of the Medicine Masters was similar to the Talisman Amulet sect. They were both major sects in the Tao of Inscription. However, the Talisman Amulet sect was more inclined towards talisman scrolls and puppets, while the Valley of the Medicine Masters was more inclined towards alchemy. Their fate was very similar to that of the Talisman Amulet sect. They both once had an emperor, but now the emperor had passed away. In fact, the Talisman Amulet sect was no longer an overlord force, because it didn't have an emperor to oversee it. Lu Mingdong took a closer look and walked around the courtyard a few times. When they arrived at another courtyard, it was already full of people. They were all young people, and there were no figures of the older generation. There were about 10 tables, about 80 to 90 people, and on the side, disciples of the Valley of the Medicine Masters walked around, carrying pots of wine. Some people couldn't wait to pour out the wine, and the fragrance immediately assailed the nose and spread in all directions. Good wine, it's really good wine. Chu Kuang's nose twitched, and his eyes lit up. It's indeed good wine. Lu Ming was also amazed. Even before drinking it, Lu Ming could feel that this was definitely a good wine. Furthermore, there were many kinds of spiritual herbs in the wine. It was definitely not an ordinary wine. Brother Lu, this is the outer court. Third-grade geniuses and above should be in the inner court. Chu Kuang sent a voice transmission to Lu Ming. So that's how it is. Lu Ming came to a sudden realization. No wonder he did not see any famous geniuses here, let alone second-grade geniuses like Goddess Tan Xiang, Jing Kongling, and Junyu. It turned out that they were divided into the inner and outer courts. Clearly, only third-grade heaven's favorites and above could enter the inner court. Chu Kuang, Zhang Wenjin, and Lu Ming walked towards the door in front of them, attracting the attention of many people. That's Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin. I'm so envious. A third-class heaven's favorite or above can enter the inner court and drink and chat with peerless beauties like Goddess Tan Xiang and Jing Kongling. I heard that the fine wine in the inner court is even more precious. Who's that kid? How come I've never seen him before? If he dares to enter the inner court, he might be kicked out. In the end, many people looked at Lu Ming in surprise. This was because they felt that Lu Ming was very unfamiliar. They had never seen him before. Only Hai Ziming, Ling Yunкong, and a few other heaven's favorites from the Floating Mountain Martial School looked normal. They knew very well that Lu Ming was definitely a third-class prodigy. Naturally, Lu Ming heard this as well. He ignored it and walked through the gate into the inner courtyard. There was a small lake in the inner courtyard, and the environment was even more elegant and unique. There was a pavilion beside the lake. In the pavilion, there was a table, and around the table, there were only 6 people. There were 5 of them: the Sandalwood Fairy, Jing Kongling, Junyu, Yin Bupo, Master Blood Luo, and a young man in white. Lu Ming had not seen him before, but he was undoubtedly a second-grade heaven's favorite. Otherwise, he would not have been qualified to sit in that position. Under the pavilion, there were 2 tables, and more than a dozen young figures were sitting there. These people were obviously third-class heaven's favorites. So it's Brother Chu and Miss Zhang. Please. Fairy Tan Xiang waved her hand and chuckled. When she turned to look at Lu Ming, a look of surprise flashed across her eyes. Then, she smiled. After all, Lu Ming had a guilty conscience. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly concealed his aura and did not look at Fairy Tan Xiang. Chu Kuang, it's been a long time since I last saw you. I wonder if your strength has improved recently. At this time, an arrogant voice was heard. Lu Ming looked in the direction of the voice. The one who spoke was a young man in a blood-red robe. He was burly and had an arrogant expression on his face. He was sitting at one of the 2 tables. Huang Kuei, you were lucky to win the Battle of Karmic Luck. There's no need to keep talking about it. Chu Kuang coldly said, his face somewhat unsightly. Luck? Hee, you really know how to put gold on your face. The young man in the blood-red robe sneered. He glanced at Zhang Wenjin and Lu Ming, and finally fixed his eyes on Lu Ming. He said, Chu Kuang, why don't you come in by yourself? Who was this person? What right did he have to step into this place? Did he not know his identity? Is this a place that trash can enter? Chapter 1022. 1022 Chapter 1022 Rare Spiritual Wine. Huang Kuei sneered at Lu Ming with a look of contempt. Lu Ming frowned slightly. He did not say a word when he came in, but Huang Kuei came to him of his own accord. Huang Kuei, Brother Lu has the qualifications to enter this place. Chu Kuang said with a sullen face. Ha, qualified? Do you think I'm qualified because you said so? Then anyone can bring people in, are there still rules? Huang Kuei sneered and then looked at Goddess Tan Xiang. Fairy, I suggest that we drive this person out. However, before Huang Kuei could finish his sentence, Goddess Tan Xiang raised her hand and interrupted him. Brother Huang, you don't have to say anything. I know Brother Lu. He is qualified to enter this place. The clear voice spread throughout the entire area, causing many people's eyes to move in surprise. Fairy Tan Xiang actually knew this young man surnamed Lu. Where did this person come from? Was he also a third-grade heaven's favorite? Then why hadn't he seen it in the Battle of Providence? Many questions appeared in everyone's mind. Huang Kuei's face froze on the spot before it turned red. He was extremely embarrassed. Previously, he had berated Lu Ming loudly, saying that he was a piece of trash and that he was not qualified. However, the next moment, Fairy Tan Xiang directly said that she knew Lu Ming and that Lu Ming was qualified. This was equivalent to slapping his face in front of everyone. His heart was burning with anger, and he was very dissatisfied with Fairy Tan Xiang, but he did not dare to show it. It's all Chu Kuang's fault, and this brat's fault. Not daring to be displeased with Goddess Tan Xiang, Huang Kuei could only direct his anger towards Lu Ming and Chu Kuang. He picked up his wine glass and took a sip, his eyes cold. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin were also stunned. Fairy Tan Xiang knew Lu Ming. Could it be that Lu Ming and Fairy Tan Xiang were old acquaintances? Everyone had their own thoughts. Even Lu Ming's expression changed slightly. Don't tell me he recognized me. Lu Ming could not help but think. Brother Lu, please take a seat. Tan Xiang waved her hand and smiled sweetly as she pointed to their table. This time, the scene was in an uproar, and everyone's face changed. What? Fairy Tan Xiang asked this Lu guy to sit at the table above. That table is reserved for second-grade heaven's favorites. Does this Lu guy have the right to sit there? How is that possible? How many second-grade heaven's favorites are there? I didn't even see him in the Battle of Providence, so how could he be a second-grade prodigy? Then why did Fairy Tan Xiang ask him to take the seat of honor? Many third-class heaven's favorites were discussing in low voices. However, everyone had a suspicious look in their eyes. Even Jing Kongling, Yin Bupo, Junyue, and the others' expressions changed slightly as they sized Lu Ming up curiously. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin's expressions were even more interesting. Lu Ming himself was also a little stunned. Brother Lu, please. Fairy Tan Xiang invited again. All right. Lu Shaoqing thanks the fairy. Lu Ming cupped his fists and stepped forward without hesitation. This kid really went up. He really dares to go up. Does he really think he can stand shoulder to shoulder with a second-grade heaven's pride? Lu Ming's actions caused a wave of soft discussions. This kid. Huang Kuei's expression turned even uglier. Lu Ming did not care about the gazes from the surrounding people. He stepped forward. He was now certain that Sandalwood had recognized him. Since she had recognized him, he could only face it. At most, he would just compensate her with those spirit herbs. Brat, get down. This is not a place you can come up. Just as Lu Ming walked up to the pavilion, a cold voice rang in his ears. It was transmitted and no one else could hear it. Lu Ming raised his eyebrows and looked at a person. Blood Luozi. The words just now were clearly said by Blood Luozi. At this moment, Blood Luozi stared at Lu Ming with an unfriendly gaze. Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. He did not look at Blood Luozi anymore. He continued to walk to the table in the pavilion and sat down on an empty chair. He completely ignored Xue Luozi, which made Xue Luozi's expression turn ugly. A wisp of killing intent flashed in his eyes. Jing Kongling, Junyue, and the rest were also sizing Lu Ming up curiously. It's almost time. Let's not wait any longer. Serve the wine now. Fairy Tanxiang's voice rang out. She then clapped her hands lightly, and a few young women brought out pots of wine. In front of each of them was a small pot of wine. The first wine to be served is called Heart-Burning Flame. Everyone, please have a taste. Fairy Tanxiang said in a sweet voice. As soon as Fairy Tanxiang finished speaking, some people impatiently poured wine and drank it all. Lu Ming poured himself a cup as well. When the wine was poured into the cup, a layer of flame seemed to appear on the surface of the wine and dance in the cup. What a wonderful wine! Lu Ming praised him in his heart. He then picked up the cup and drank it in one go. When the wine entered his mouth, it was rich and sweet, but when it flowed down his throat and into his stomach, it was like a flame, burning fiercely. In particular, there was a stream of heat flowing into his heart. Lu Ming felt as if his heart was on fire, but he did not feel any pain. Instead, he felt warm and extremely comfortable. This wine can also burn and condense true essence. Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. He realized that his essential core had become more solid. Good wine. Lu Ming could not help but pour himself another cup and finish it. Following that, Lu Ming poured a few glasses of wine and finished the pot of wine in no time. Lu Ming licked his lips, looking as if he had not had enough. It was the same for the others. Even some women who didn't like alcohol had finished it all. Good wine, burning heart. The wine is indeed as good as its name. A young man in white beside Lu Ming sighed. This person was the peerless genius of Tianxia Academy, Kong Xian. It's indeed good wine. Junyue also sighed in admiration. A demonic light flashed on his body and his aura was overbearing. It's good that everyone likes it. My little sister's efforts were not in vain. Next, I'll invite everyone to taste the second wine. Fairy Tanxiang chuckled and then clapped her hands. Another young woman brought up a pot of wine, and everyone still had a pot. This wine is called the Spirit Cleansing Dew. Fairy Tanxiang introduced. With the intense flames burning heart wine from before, many people were no longer in a hurry and began to drink. Lu Ming poured a cup and drank it in one go. The feeling that this wine gave was completely different from the previous raging flames burning heart wine. As soon as this wine entered his stomach, a cold feeling spread throughout his body and finally gathered in his mind. At that moment, Lu Ming felt that his mind was extremely clear and his thoughts were active. It was several times stronger than usual. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He sensed the intent realm of the earth carefully and realized that his speed of comprehension of the intent realm had increased by several times. This kind of wine could actually improve a warrior's comprehension ability. Of course, this was only temporary. The wine had been mixed with elixirs. Once the medicinal effect wore off, the effect would naturally disappear. However, it was already shocking enough. If he took it for a long time, his cultivation speed would definitely increase greatly. One cup after another, and very quickly, another pot of wine was finished. After that, Goddess Tanxiang ordered people to bring out a few more types of wine. Each type of wine had a different effect, and they were not simple wine. Each type of wine was refined from spirit herbs and wine. They had different flavors, and it was very satisfying. Chapter 1023. 1023 Challenging Lu Ming. The wine brewed by Fairy Tanxiang is really rare. I'm really lucky today. Ha, that's right. If other people knew about this, they would be so envious. The young men began to flatter her, hoping to gain her attention. Since everyone is so excited, and it's rare for us to gather together after the Battle of Providence. Why don't we use martial arts to liven things up? Huang Kuei raised his wine cup and strode out, his voice echoing throughout the entire area. Everyone's hearts moved. The show was about to begin. With so many heaven's favorites here, drinking was just one of the reasons. Sparring was also a must. Obviously, Huang Kuei was the first to suggest this. Using martial arts to liven things up, naturally. With a wave of her hands, inscriptions glowed on the ground. In an empty space not far away, light flickered, and a fighting ring appeared. This battle platform was originally built by our sect's seniors for sparring. It's sturdy and immortal. Everyone, please feel free to display your skills. Fairy Tan Xiang introduced. Alright, thank you, Fairy Tan Xiang. Huang Kuei laughed as he stepped forward and landed on the fighting stage. His eyes swept around, finally landing on Chu Kuang as he said, Chu Kuang, you lost to me in the Battle of Providence. Half a year has passed. I wonder how much progress you've made. Do you dare to fight me? Why wouldn't I? Chu Kuang drank a cup of wine in one gulp. His body moved and he landed on the fighting stage. Miss Zhang, what are Brother Chu's chances of winning? Lu Ming sent a voice transmission to Zhang Wenjin. Zhang Wenjin's expression was grave. She also sent a voice transmission to Lu Ming. It's hard to say. Huang Kuei is the second most powerful genius in Cold Blood Hall. Brother Chu was defeated by him in the Battle of Providence. Although Brother Chu has improved in the past 6 months, Huang Kuei will not stagnate. It turns out that Huang Kuei is also from Cold Blood Hall. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. No wonder Blood Luo Zi had shouted at him coldly and told him to get lost. Boom! At this moment, the two of them had already started fighting in the fighting ring. The two powerful auras collided with each other, creating a violent boom. Chu Kuang and Huang Kuei's cultivation was at the early stage of the 9th level spirit embryo realm. It was clear that they had just broken through 10,000 miles of ice. Chu Kuang's blade flashed, and the terrifying cold qi seemed to be able to freeze the entire alchemy division. It's this move again, Blood Flame Claw. Huang Kuei's blood qi was boiling as he clawed out claw rays. These claw rays reeked of blood, and within them, there was a burning heat. The blood-red flame and the ice continued to collide with each other, causing a sizzling sound to be heard on the fighting ring. The ice was melted by the fire, and a mist filled the air. Yin Bupo waved his hand, and the cold wind whistled, blowing away the mist. At this moment, the paragons of the outer court had also heard the commotion. They all rose into the air and looked over. Chu Kuang has made a move, and his opponent is Huang Kuei. Hai Ziming said. In the Battle of Providence, Chu Kuang lost to senior brother Huang Kuei. This time, Chu Kuang will definitely lose. A Cold Blood Hall genius sneered. Times have changed, I don't think so. Hai Ziming replied coldly. Oh, really? Just watch. The Cold Blood Hall disciple sneered. Cold Blood Hall was next to the floating mountain, and their relationship was not good. In the land of Central Continent, the various emperors stood side by side. The various overlords and forces were divided and fought for hegemony with each other. They were not harmonious and had conflicts with each other. For example, the Sky Eagle Castle and Cold Blood Hall were mortal enemies. At the same time, the relationship between Cold Blood Hall and Floating Mountain was not good. As the crowd discussed, the battle on the fighting ring became even more intense. The two of them had already exchanged more than 100 moves. The bloodthirsty swirled. Huang Kuei displayed a terrifying technique of the Cold Blood Hall. A blood-red light curtain burst out in all directions. Chu Kuang's expression changed drastically, and he quickly retreated as if he was very afraid. But even though he retreated, he was still affected. The blood in his body was boiling, as if it was about to leave his body. Blood Flame Emperor Hand. Huang Kuei once again changed his technique, and his attacks became even more violent. Chu Kuang had no choice but to use his bloodline fusion. But immediately after, Huang Kuei also used bloodline fusion. It turned out to be a blood-red claw. It seemed to be the claw of some kind of living creature, and its power was terrifying. The two bloodlines clashed in the air, and a few dozen more moves quickly passed. However, it was obvious that Huang Kuei was stronger, and he slowly gained the upper hand. In the end, Chu Kuang's bloodline was torn apart by the blood claw, and he transformed back into his human form. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and his expression was extremely unsightly. Huang Kuei also transformed into his human form and laughed. Chu Kuang, I think you're becoming more and more useless. You're losing even faster than the last time. You'll never be my opponent. Ha ha ha. Huang Kuei laughed arrogantly, his voice filled with contempt. Chu Kuang's face was gloomy, but he didn't say anything. Since he had lost, saying that everything was in vain would only make him lose even more face. Haha, I told you, Chu Kuang will definitely lose. Your floating mountain sect, other than the Jing Kong Ling, there's no one else you can take out. In the air above the outer yard, Cold Blood Hall's sovereign sneered, while Hai Ziming and the others had ugly expressions. However, Cold Blood Hall's sovereign was right. The floating mountain sect was indeed slightly weaker than Cold Blood Hall. Even among the overlord forces, there were strong and weak forces. The floating mountain was considered weak among the overlord forces, while Cold Blood Hall was obviously stronger. Chu Kuang walked down from the fighting ring with an unsightly expression. He came to Wenjin Zhang's side and sighed. Losing to Huang Kuei for the second time was a huge blow to Chu Kuang. Big brother Chu, it's normal to win or lose. Winning once doesn't mean that you'll always win. I believe that Big Brother Chu will be able to defeat Huang Kuei in the future. Zhang Wenjin comforted her. Wenjin, I'm fine. Chu Kuang smiled and quickly adjusted his state of mind. Huang Kuei was still standing on the fighting ring, feeling smug and proud. He had an invincible look on his face. Finally, his gaze landed on Lu Ming and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Lu Shaoqing, do you dare to come up and fight me? Huang Kuei shouted. He had his eyes on Lu Ming. Lu Ming had actually been invited by Fairy Tan Xiang to sit with her and the rest. This made him extremely jealous. What was Lu Ming? How could he sit with Fairy Tan Xiang and the others? How strong could a person who did not participate in the Battle of Providence be? Huang Kuei was certain that Lu Ming was not strong. Perhaps he was just lucky to have met Goddess Tan Xiang. Moreover, Lu Ming had come with Chu Kuang. He wanted to suppress Lu Ming in public and humiliate him. He wanted to prove that he was stronger than Lu Ming. This would also be a blow to Chu Kuang. You want to challenge me? Lu Ming cast a sidelong glance at Huang Kuei and spoke indifferently. That's right. Do you dare to fight? If you don't, then quickly admit defeat and get out of here. Huang Kuei laughed in disdain. Hee hee, okay, I agree. However, I won't take advantage of you. You've been exhausted in the battle just now. Let's fight again after you've recovered. Lu Ming said. There's no need for that. It's just dealing with Chu Kuang. It won't cost me much. And even if it does, I'm confident that it'll be more than enough to deal with you. Huang Kuei had a confident expression. Oh, really? Then do as you wish. Lu Ming stood up and took a step forward, appearing on the fighting ring. Everyone's eyes were on Lu Ming. Many people's eyes were filled with anticipation. Lu Ming had actually been invited by Fairy Tan Xiang to sit at the same table as them. Everyone was very curious. What kind of abilities did Lu Ming have? Chapter 1024. 1024 Chapter 1024 Beating a Dead Dog. Even Junyue, Jing Kongling, Kong Xian, and the others were looking forward to it. Even Fairy Tan Xiang herself was looking forward to it. She invited Lu Ming to take a seat because she recognized him as the person who had stolen the medicine previously. He did not have any mental energy fire, but he could move freely in the array. She was very curious about this, so she invited Lu Ming to take a seat. She also wanted to see how strong Lu Ming's real abilities were. That is, Lu Shaoqing. In the outer courtyard, Hai Ziming, Ling Yunкong, and the rest were shocked as they recognized Lu Ming. It's that kid, the one who went in with Chu Kuang. Ha, and nobody actually dares to fight with senior brother Huang. I bet he'll be completely crushed by senior brother Huang within 10 moves. 10 moves, I don't think we should even take 5. A few cold-blood Hall talents sneered. Don't be too sure. Hai Ziming replied coldly. He had fought with Lu Ming before. He felt that Lu Ming did not use his full strength when he fought with him. He might be able to fight Huang Kuei. It's not that you're too full of yourself, but that there's no suspense. Cold Blood Hall's paragon looked confident. On the fighting ring, Lu Ming and Huang Kuei stood opposite each other. Make your move. Lu Ming said indifferently with a carefree look. What are you pretending for? I'm going to make you reveal your true form. Huang Kuei laughed coldly. His body flashed and a blood-red light burst forth. A blood-red claw ray grabbed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming did not even look at it. He struck with his palm. On his palm, a 5-colored radiance flashed. Bang! The palm and the blood claw collided, producing a cracking sound and a muffled groan. Huang Kuei's figure quickly retreated to the other side of the fighting ring with an extremely ugly expression. One of his hands trembled slightly, and one of his fingers was deformed. The entire place fell silent. Lu Ming had actually forced Huang Kuei back with one palm and even broke one of his fingers. How could his combat strength be so terrifying? So you have some ability. I was just careless just now. Next, I will suppress you. Huang Kuei's voice rang out. His deformed fingers began to twist and return to normal. Buzz! Buzz! His figure flashed and he pounced toward Lu Ming. Blood Flame Emperor Claw. Huang Kuei clawed out hundreds of times in a row. Endless blood-colored claw radiance was aimed at Lu Ming. Each claw was terrifyingly sharp and emitted a scorching aura. They had the terrifying power of burning and corroding. The bloodthirsty swirled. At the same time, Huang Kuei unleashed his bloodthirsty swirl and cast many ultimate techniques at the same time. He wanted to use this move to defeat Lu Ming in one fell swoop and humiliate him to avenge his broken finger. Is this the bloodthirsty technique of Cold Blood Hall? It's far from the devouring power of the 9 dragons. Lu Ming felt the blood in his body trembling slightly and he thought to himself. The bloodthirst art could indeed affect other people's blood and weaken the other party's combat strength. However, it had no effect on Lu Ming. The devouring power was activated, and the blood calmed down. Bang! Lu Ming took a step forward and struck with his palm again. The power of this palm was more than 10 times stronger than the palm just now. The space twisted and exploded. The bloodthirsty forces whirled, collapsed like tofu. The claw radiance that filled the sky disappeared without a trace under Lu Ming's palm. Kacha! Accompanied by the sound of bones breaking and a shrill scream, a figure retreated rapidly. Huang Kuei, it's Huang Kuei again. At this moment, one of his palms was completely deformed. The bones in his fingers and palm were all broken into hundreds of pieces by the terrifying force. CSI. Gasps could be heard from all around. Everyone looked at Lu Ming in shock. Lu Ming had actually beaten Huang Kuei to such a state so easily. He had completely crushed Huang Kuei. Lu Ming actually had such combat ability. This was too terrifying. Brother Lu's cultivation has broken through. Chu Kuang muttered. He felt that Lu Ming's cultivation had broken through. Previously, he was at the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm, and now, he was at the 9th level. When Lu Ming was still at the 8th level of the spirit embryo realm, he could already faintly suppress him. Now that his cultivation had broken through, he was indeed more powerful. Huang Kuei was also in disbelief. Lu Ming's power was far beyond his imagination. Lu Shaoqing, let's call it a day. You have the upper hand. However, I've been exhausted from the battle with Chu Kuang. We'll fight another day. Huang Kuei cried out. He was clearly afraid. You want to fight and not fight? Did you ask me? Lu Ming sneered. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Huang Kuei in an instant. This Huang Kuei was truly laughable. Before the battle, he claimed that he had not expended much energy and that he was more than enough to deal with Lu Ming. Now that the situation was not right, he wanted to give up the battle. He even used the excuse that he had expended some energy during the battle with Chu Kuang. It was simply laughable. Lu Ming could not be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He struck out with his palm. You. Huang Kuei was frightened and used all his strength to block, but in the next moment, he was sent flying. The bone armor of the other claw was also broken. The next moment, he activated his bloodline and turned into a blood-red claw. However, Lu Ming took a step forward and appeared in front of the blood-red claw, striking it with his palm. The palm suppressed everything and collided with the blood-red claw with a violent boom. Then, the blood-red claw crumbled and turned back into Huang Kuei. Bang! Bang! Lu Ming used the 9 dragons' heaven-treading steps and stomped toward Huang Kuei. Stop! In the pavilion, Shui Luozi stood up and shouted, his blood qi soaring into the sky. However, Lu Ming only glanced at him casually and ignored him. He stomped on Huang Kuei's body a few times in succession. Huang Kuei screamed in pain and fell heavily on the fighting ring. The fighting ring rumbled and the sound of bones breaking came from Huang Kuei's body. Then, he lay on the fighting ring like a dead fish, spitting out blood and convulsing. Crushing, a complete crushing. The surroundings were silent. Not a single sound could be heard. In the sky above the outer court, the paragons who saw this scene were all dumbfounded. The third-class prodigy, Huang Kuei, was stronger than Chu Kuang in terms of combat strength. However, he was like a piece of trash in the face of Lu Ming. He was easily crushed and beaten into a dead dog. What kind of combat strength was this? Could it be that Lu Ming was a second-grade heaven's favorite? Hai Ziming, Ling Yunkong, and the others sucked in a breath of cold air, feeling a lingering fear. They finally knew that Lu Ming did not use his true abilities when he fought with them back then. Otherwise, they would not have survived. The Cold Blood Hall elites were even more dumbfounded. Previously, they had said that Huang Kuei would be able to crush Lu Ming in 10 or even 5 moves. However, the truth was the complete opposite. Lu Ming had beaten Huang Kuei to a pulp in less than 5 moves. Senior brother Huang Kuei, it's probably because of the battle with Chu Kuang that he's exhausted. A Cold Blood Hall elite finally spoke after a long while, but he was despised by everyone. The battle between Lu Ming and Huang Kuei was not as simple as a loss of essential core. It was a complete suppression in terms of combat strength. Even if Huang Kuei was at his peak, the result would be the same. Even a blind man could see it. They were not the only ones. The geniuses of the inner court were also dumbfounded. The third-grade heaven's favorites were shocked. Lu Ming's strength was way above theirs. Chapter 1025. 1025 Chapter 1025 Great Battle with Blood Luo. As for Jing Kongling, Junyu, Kong Xian, Yin Bupo, and the others, they all looked solemn. The combat strength that Lu Ming had displayed was already close to their level. It's indeed powerful. Fairy Tan Xiang's eyes revealed a strange light. Kid, I told you to stop just now, didn't you hear me? Shui Luozi's face was gloomy. He stared at Lu Ming and said coldly. Lu Ming glanced at Blood Luozi indifferently and said, "This is my battle with Huang Kuei and you're telling me to stop. Who do you think you are?" Lu Ming's voice was heard, causing the entire place to suddenly fall silent. Not only the inner court, but the outer court as well. Many people widened their eyes in shock. Who do you think you are? Lu Ming actually dared to speak to Blood Luozi in this manner. Did he not want to live? Chu Kuang, Zhang Wenjin, Hai Ziming, and the others all gasped. This is terrible. Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin's expressions changed drastically, and they looked worried. Although Lu Ming was strong, he should not be Shui Luo's match. After all, Shui Luo was a second-grade heaven's favorite. There was a huge difference in combat strength between a second-grade and third-grade heaven's favorite. Just like the Emperor God, if he used his full power, he could kill Blood Sword in a few moves. As expected, Blood Luozi's body emitted a cold murderous intent. He stared at Lu Ming coldly and laughed out of anger. "Ha, brat, you actually dare to speak to me like this? Do you really think that you're invincible just because you have some battle power? I'll let you know what I am now." "And what are you?" "You will pay a heavy price for what you said." Then, in a flash, Shui Luozi appeared on the fighting ring. His terrifying killing intent filled the whole place, causing many people to shiver. Everyone was shocked. Blood Luozi was going to attack Lu Ming. He had the intention to kill Lu Ming. In the pavilion, Jing Kongling frowned and said, "Shui Luozi, you've gone too far. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you." After all, Lu Ming had come with Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin. As the #1 genius of the Floating Mountain sect, Jing Kongling could not just watch Master Blood Luo kill Lu Ming. "Jing Kongling, are you trying to meddle in my business?" Shui Luozi said coldly. "So what?" The pure and ethereal spirit stood up, his body covered in mist, making him look even more ethereal. "Miss Jing, there's no need for you to take action. I'm enough to deal with a blood bat." Lu Ming's voice was heard again, leaving the others speechless. Lu Ming said that he would deal with the Blood Luozi alone with a confident expression. Where did he get his confidence from? "Hee, Sister Kongling, I think you don't need to interfere. Maybe there will be a surprise." Fairy Tan Xiang smiled. She was even more curious about Lu Ming now. Jing Kongling's gaze turned and he actually sat down as well, not saying anything more. "Lu Shaoqing, right? It's good to be confident, but you'll soon realize that your confidence is sometimes very stupid." Seeing Jing Kongling sit down, the killing intent in Shui Luozi's eyes became even colder. "Is that so?" Lu Ming smiled faintly and kicked Huang Kuei, who was still twitching, out of the fighting ring. This action made Blood Luozi's face darken again. He dared to do this in front of him. This was a slap to his face. Boom! A powerful aura burst out from Shui Luozi's body, and a layer of blood-red flames danced wildly. This kind of blood-colored flame was extremely terrifying. Compared to the Wang family's purple extreme heavenly fire, its power was even more shocking and even more bizarre. Lu Ming's face darkened slightly as the essential core in his body circulated crazily. He didn't dare to be careless in front of Shui Luozi. After all, Shui Luozi was a heaven's favorite on the same level as an emperor god. Blood Sky Blade. The endless blood-red flames condensed into a saber. Blood Luozi held the saber with both hands and stomped his feet. He rushed toward Lu Ming madly and slashed down. The terrifying power pressed down on Lu Ming. The power of this strike alone had already surpassed Huang Kuei's. The five-colored intent realm covered his entire body as he activated the prison-suppressing heaven technique. Lu Ming strode forward and struck out with his palm. Boom! The saber ray and the palm collided with a terrifying boom. Lu Ming's body swayed and he took a few steps back. Lu Shaoqing has retreated. He's not his match. I knew it. He can't be eldest senior brother's match. As soon as Lu Ming retreated, the Cold Blood Hall elites began to mock him. It's just the beginning, what's the rush? Hai Ziming replied coldly. Buzz. At this moment, Blood Luo Zi slashed at Lu Ming again. His battle prowess is indeed powerful. Then I'll increase the power of the prison suppressing heaven technique. Lu Ming had an idea and he struck out with his palm again. This time, Lu Ming did not retreat. He stabilized himself. Blood Sky Blade, 9 heavenly blades. Shui Luo Zi shouted as he slashed out his Scarlet Heaven Blade. Each slash was stronger than the last, and it seemed like it could destroy everything. A dragon's roar rang out as Lu Ming burst out with 2 streams of dragon energy. His strength increased greatly as he struck out with his palms continuously. Boom! 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 The fighting ring kept shaking, and the terrible force shot in all directions. In the blink of an eye, dozens of moves had passed. The scene was silent. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they stared at the 2 people fighting on the fighting ring. How can he be so strong? The Cold Blood Hall disciples were shocked. Previously, they thought that Blood Luo Zi could easily suppress Lu Ming. But now, they realized that they were wrong. Lu Ming could actually fight with Blood Luo Zi to this extent. Jing Kongling, Junyu, and the other second-grade Heaven's favorites all had serious expressions. Lu Ming was already qualified to be ranked as a second-grade Heaven's favorite since he could fight Blood Luo Zi to this extent. Moreover, they could tell that Lu Ming's cultivation was at the early stage of the 9th-level Spirit Embryo Realm, while Blood Luo Zi's cultivation was at the peak of the 9th-level Spirit Embryo Realm. It was shocking that Shui Luo Zi didn't have the upper hand when his cultivation was stronger. The more he fought, the more shocked Shui Luo Zi became. Lu Ming's combat strength was beyond his expectations. The Bloodthirsty swirled. Shui Luo Zi cast the Bloodthirsty technique. A circle of light curtain spread out and enveloped Lu Ming. Lu Ming's blood was almost boiling. Blood Luo Zi was much more powerful than Huang Kuei when he used the same move. Comparing devouring power is like showing off your skills in front of an expert. Devour. Lu Ming's left palm exploded with a terrifying devouring power, which enveloped Blood Luo Zi's entire body. At this moment, Shui Luo Zi's eyes widened in disbelief. The bloodthirsty intent. No, this power is even more terrifying than the bloodthirsty intent. It's 10 times more terrifying. My essence blood, fresh blood, Zhen Yuan, and even my intent realm are shaking. What kind of secret technique is this? Shui Luo Zi's mind was racing. Shui Luo Zi was stunned. Lu Ming would not let go of this opportunity. He arrived in an instant and slashed at Shui Luo Zi with his palm like a heavenly blade. Not good. Shui Luo Zi hurriedly slashed his saber, clashing with Lu Ming's. The saber light that was shattered by Lu Ming's palm hit Shui Luo Zi with a terrifying force. He spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated quickly. Bloodline fusion. While he was retreating, he performed bloodline fusion to unleash his strongest combat power. For dragon energies. He exclaimed. Seeing this, Lu Ming also released 4 bursts of dragon power. His skin glowed with purple light, and his power increased greatly. He charged at Shui Luo Zi. Chapter 1026. 1026 Chapter 1026 Defeating Blood Luo. Squeak. Shui Luo Zi transformed into a blood-winged sky bat and shrieked. A terrifying invisible sound wave spread toward Lu Ming. Enveloped by the sound waves, Lu Ming felt his eardrums ringing and his heart beating faster. This was the blood-winged sky bat's innate secret skill. It was extremely terrifying. Those with low cultivation would have their hearts shattered by this sound wave. Circulating the true war dragon technique, Lu Ming's vital energy was like a dragon, guarding his body and blocking the external sound waves. He soared into the sky and charged towards the blood-winged sky bat. The blood-winged sky bat screeched and pounced at Lu Ming, starting a new battle. Energy shot out in all directions, but the two were still tied, and it was difficult to determine the winner. A second-rate chosen. Lu Shaoqing is a second-rate chosen. Ling Yunкong mumbled to himself in the sky above the outer courtyard. His face was pale and he was filled with lingering fear. Without a doubt, Lu Ming was a second-grade heaven's favorite. His combat strength was terrifyingly powerful. The thought of going against Lu Ming in the past made Ling Yunкong's back wet with cold sweat. He was filled with lingering fear. It was obvious that Lu Ming had been wary of the Shao family and did not use his full strength. Otherwise, he would have ended up in a miserable state. Back then, he was forced by Lu Ming to take a blood oath to never deal with the Shao family again. He still harbored a grudge and wanted to find an opportunity to take revenge. But now, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured on him, extinguishing all his thoughts. Seek revenge on Lu Ming. What a joke. Was he courting death? If Lu Ming were to unleash his full power, he could kill him with one finger. He secretly decided that he would find an opportunity to apologize to Lu Ming in the future and admit his mistakes. At the same time, he would comfort the Shao family 10 times more and build a good relationship with them. Hai Ziming, Wu Kong, and the others who had dealt with Lu Ming before also smiled bitterly to themselves. They knew that Lu Ming had been merciful earlier. The other talents of Cold Blood Hall were all pale and silent. The inner court was in a similar state. The third-grade geniuses were also silent. However, they knew that another second-grade genius had appeared. Brother Lu. Chu Kuang bitterly smiled and shook his head. Previously, he had thought that Lu Ming might be stronger than him. However, he did not expect Lu Ming to be so much stronger than him. Like I said, this guy might bring me a surprise. In the pavilion, Goddess Tan Xiang smiled. It's indeed a surprise. I didn't expect that such a person would appear after the Battle of Providence. The pure spirit nodded. Jun Yu, Yin Bupo, and the others looked even more solemn. They knew that from now on, they would have one more powerful opponent on their way forward. In the sky, Lu Ming and Blood Luo Zi had already exchanged hundreds of moves, but neither of them had a clear winner. Blood Luo Zi was indeed very strong. He was definitely on the same level as a divine emperor. However, Lu Ming was different from the Battle of Providence, where he had comprehended one more intent realm and his combat strength had increased greatly. Now, Lu Ming could tie with Blood Luo Zi without using Blood Meridian Fusion. If he used Blood Meridian Fusion, he would have no problem overpowering Blood Luo Zi. However, even without using the Blood Fusion, Lu Ming could still suppress the Blood Luo Zi because he had the Nanyuan Stone. It's time to end this. Defeat. Lu Ming let out a long howl. The vital essence in his body circulated wildly as he unleashed the prison-suppressing heaven technique with all his might. Boom! With a palm strike, the true essence in his body was completely absorbed. Use the divine level martial technique with all your might. Shui Luo Zi roared and gritted his teeth. He flapped his wings like 2 heavenly blades. Without a doubt, Shui Luo Zi had also comprehended a low-grade divine-level bloodline martial art technique from his bloodline. However, like Lu Ming, he could not fully perform it because he did not have enough vital essence. Seeing that Lu Ming had used his full strength, he could only use his full strength to resist. Boom! The two terrifying attacks collided with each other, creating an earth-shattering boom. The space twisted rapidly. In the end, a pitch-black hole appeared, revealing a pitch-black space. The two of them exploded with all their strength and attacked each other. They actually pierced through the space. Being able to pierce through space was something that could only be done by someone in the spiritual god realm. This meant that the two of them had unleashed their strongest attacks. The power that collided with each other had already reached the spiritual god realm. This was an extremely shocking matter. There was a huge explosion, and the two figures retreated rapidly. However, Lu Ming retreated a few dozen meters before he stopped and stood in the void. The true essence in his body wasn't exhausted, but was in a state of absolute fullness. Just now, he had absorbed the true essence from the energy-storing stone. Shui Luozi couldn't maintain his blood-winged sky bat form. He turned into his human form and retreated 100 meters before he managed to stop in the air, gasping for breath. "Don't tell me it'll end in a draw," the pristine void spirit muttered. They could see that they had both used their full strength in the last attack. It was obvious that their true essence had been used up. The two of them were probably too weak to fight. "Lu Shaoqing, I admit that you have some skills. Today is a draw. If we fight again another day, I will defeat you," Blood Luozi said. "A draw? Who said it was a draw?" Lu Ming sneered. "You don't want a draw. Our true qi is already exhausted, there's no point in continuing this fight," Blood Luozi said. "Who said my true essence is exhausted?" Lu Ming's lips curled into a mocking smile. The vital essence in his body circulated rapidly and a powerful aura exploded. Bang! Bang! At that moment, Jing Kongling, Junyu, Kong Xian, and the rest could no longer remain calm. They stood up from their chairs and looked at Lu Ming in shock. Lu Ming actually still had essential core. He actually still had the strength to fight. How was that possible? Impossible. Shui Luozi's eyes were filled with disbelief. Lu Ming had used all his strength and performed a divine-level martial arts technique. It was impossible for him to have any more strength to fight. What was going on? "Storage elemental stones, you have storage elemental stones?" Shui Luozi's pupils shrank and he shouted. Only by receiving elemental stones could one instantly replenish their true elemental energy. Otherwise, even the best pills would require some time to recover one's Jinyuan. The others came to a realization as well. They did not expect Lu Ming to have such a treasure. Lu Ming did not deny it. He stepped forward and approached Shui Luozi. He sneered, "Our battle is not over yet." Boom! Lu Ming took a step forward and dashed toward Blood Luozi like a stream of light. "Damn it!" Shui Luozi roared and used his remaining strength to retreat. However, he had exhausted all his vital essence. How could he avoid Lu Ming's attack? The terrifying palm force landed on Blood Luozi's body. Blood Luozi screamed in pain as countless bones in his body were broken. His body fell to the ground of the alchemy division. Boom! Blood Luozi smashed a big hole in the ground, and smoke and dust filled the air. "I'll kill you." Lu Ming rushed in that direction, his eyes filled with killing intent. The crowd was shocked. Lu Ming wanted to kill the blood-covered prince. How audacious! If he really killed the blood-covered prince, the senior management of the Cold Blood Hall would go crazy. "Stop!" With a furious roar, a blood-red light slashed down from the sky and headed toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming retreated quickly and dodged the blood light. Then, an elder in a blood-red robe stepped on the air and descended. Chapter 1027. 1027 The Five Young Tycoons. The blood-robed elder's aura was extremely shocking. He was actually a spiritual god realm master. There were actually spiritual god realm experts from Cold Blood Hall nearby. Lu Ming frowned. It seemed that the most powerful geniuses of the major forces had guards around them and experts following them in secret. For example, Jing Kongling, Yin Bupo, and the others might have experts following them secretly. This kind of person was called a guardian. To protect the growth of these geniuses. It was because a heaven's favorite like Blood Luo Master was too rare. It was impossible for such a heaven's favorite to appear in every generation. There would only be one in many generations. If he died in battle, it would be a great loss. Young man, don't push your luck. Stop what you're doing. The blood-robed elder cast a cold glance at Lu Ming, sending chills down his spine. This blood-robed elder was definitely terrifying. He was not someone an ordinary spiritual god realm master could compare to. Lu Ming frowned and did not say anything. The blood-robed elder reached out his hand and grabbed the unconscious Shui Luozi. His body flashed and he turned into a blood light and left. His only mission was to ensure the safety of the blood Luo seed. He would not attack Lu Ming. Lu Ming was so powerful. Who knew what kind of forces were behind him? Whether there were experts following him or not, he did not want to get into trouble. Who? Lu Ming heaved a sigh of relief. These geniuses of the major forces were indeed not that simple. They had such powerful people following them. The elder in the blood-red robe gave him immense pressure. If he attacked, Lu Ming had no confidence that he could escape. Lu Ming returned to the inner courtyard after Shui Luozi was taken away. Brother Lu, you're truly an unparalleled prodigy. I'm impressed. As soon as Lu Ming returned, Fairy Tan Xiang raised her glass to him with a sweet smile. You're too kind, Fairy Tan Xiang. I only took advantage of the Nanyuan stones. Lu Ming said. Since the others had already guessed it, he had nothing to hide. Junyue, Yin Bupo, and the others looked at Lu Ming with grave expressions. Lu Ming's combat strength was already extremely powerful. He also had the Nanyuan stones. If they were to fight him, they would not be his match. However, they were not too worried. As long as they broke through to the spiritual god realm, their essential core would be incomparably rich and they would be able to use divine-level martial arts techniques at will. By then, they would not be afraid even if Lu Ming had the Nanyuan stones. Brother Lu's strength is admirable. Come, let me toast to Brother Lu. Kong Xian, who was dressed in white, raised her wine cup and smiled. Brother Kong, please. Lu Ming greeted him with a smile. Then, Jing Kongling, Junyue, and Yin Bupo toasted Lu Ming one by one. Strength was everything. It was only when they saw Lu Ming's strength that they truly regarded him as someone on the same level as them. Previously, although Fairy Tan Xiang had invited Lu Ming to sit with them, they had looked down on him and did not take him seriously. They were all Heaven's Pride experts that were rarely seen in the world. They were all prideful in their hearts. If one was not on the same level as them, they would not put you in their eyes at all. Even if they were friendly on the surface, they still looked down on you in their bones. But now, Lu Ming had won their attention. Strength spoke for itself. It's really a great era now, and there are as many Heaven's favorites as there are clouds. I thought that after the Battle of Providence, all the Heaven's favorites would have appeared. I didn't expect that even after the Battle of Providence, someone like Brother Lu would appear. It seems that I've been too complacent. I should keep working hard, or I won't be surpassed by you all. Kong Xian was a forthright person. She drank a cup of wine and sighed. You're right, Brother Kong. In the current era, one has to make progress or fall behind. During the Battle of Providence, Longchen entered the spiritual god realm. He was unparalleled in the world, but I heard that Xian Yanjuan has also entered the spiritual god realm not long ago. Demon Mountain Junyue also sighed. What? Xian Yanjuan has also entered the spiritual god realm? Fairy Tan Xiang, Jing Kongling, and the others were all shocked. This matter is absolutely true. I've also heard the elders mention it. Not only that, Yang Patian has also broken through to the spiritual god realm. Kong Xian said with a serious look. Jing Kongling and the others gasped in shock. Lu Ming was extremely shocked. The people Kong Xian and the others were talking about were from the 5 giants of Central Continent. Among them, Long Chen was known as the number 1 and the only person in the world. He was extremely powerful and had already broken through to the spiritual god realm during the Battle of Providence. Without a doubt, he was the number 1 person among the younger generation in the Central Continent. Xian Yanjuan and Yang Patian were also 2 of the 5 giants of the Central Continent. Now, they had all broken through to the spiritual god realm. These big shots were not even 30 years old, but they had already reached this step. It was truly terrifying. Especially Xian Yanjuan. Back in the East Continent, when Lu Ming was still very weak, he had met Xian Yanjuan once. She was Xian Yanqing's sister. Lu Ming was shocked when he first heard Xian Yanjuan's name. Now, he was even more shocked. He didn't expect Xian Yanjuan to have already broken through to the spirit god realm. Xian Yanjuan was the number 1 genius of the Xia clan of the ancient Saint dynasty. Not only was she one of the 5 giants of Central Continent, but she was also one of the 5 beauties. Such a person was truly rare. Lu Ming had always suspected that Xian Yanjuan had hidden his cultivation level when he first met him. Xian Yanjuan, Yang Patian has broken through to the spirit god realm. I wonder how the other 2 are doing. Keng Xiang sighed. The other 2 she was referring to were the other 2 of the 5 magnates, who were unparalleled heroes of the monster race. I don't know. I didn't receive any news, but I guess the other 2 are definitely not weak. Kong Xian said. Everyone's faces were solemn. The 5 young tycoons had entered the spiritual god realm one after another. They understood that the younger generation of the Central Continent was about to step into the era of spiritual god hegemony. The figures of the younger generation had begun to catch up and even surpass the older generation, reaching the peak of the continent. They were under immense pressure. In the eyes of the other geniuses and Heaven's Pride experts, they were all high and mighty, targets that they had to chase up to. However, from their perspective, they were looking at Heaven's Pride experts of the same level or even higher, such as the top 5 young warriors. Only by competing with stronger people would one feel the pressure and motivation. Only then would one be able to constantly surpass oneself and achieve breakthroughs. As the group drank, they chatted. Sometimes, they talked about martial arts, other times, they talked about some secrets. Lu Ming learned a lot of things that he had not heard of from them. After 3 rounds of wine, everyone got up and left. Thank you, Goddess Tan Xiang, for taking out so much wine. I'll take my leave now and return to the Tianxia Academy to focus on my closed-door cultivation. Otherwise, I'll really fall behind. Kong Xian cupped his fists at Fairy Tan Xiang. Brother Kong is too polite. Fairy Tan Xiang smiled. Brother Lu, we hit it off at first sight today. If there's a chance in the future, you can come to Tianxia Academy to find me. Kong Xian then looked at Lu Ming. Definitely. Lu Ming said with a smile. Kong Xian nodded and stepped into the air to leave. After that, Yin Bupo and Jing Kongling also left. Fairy Tan Xiang, I'll also take my leave. Lu Ming cupped his fists and turned to leave. Brother Lu, please wait a moment. How about you stay for a drink with me? Fairy Tan Xiang said in a sweet voice. Chapter 1028. 1028 The Spirit God's Attack. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat when he heard Fairy Tan Xiang calling out to him. The others were also surprised. Some of the third-class prodigies looked at Lu Ming in surprise. Fairy Tan Xiang had actually invited Lu Ming to stay behind and have a drink with her. What was the meaning of this? Could it be that Fairy Tan Xiang had taken a fancy to Lu Ming? At the thought of this, many young men stared at Lu Ming with burning eyes, full of envy, jealousy, and hatred. However, Lu Ming groaned in his heart. Most likely, he would ask about the stealing of the medicine. Ha, Brother Lu, Wenjin and I will take our leave. Chu Kuang cupped his fists at Lu Ming and Fairy Tan Xiang. He blinked his eyes at Lu Ming with great admiration. Lu Ming was speechless. He did not want to stay. Soon, everyone had left, leaving only Lu Ming and Fairy Tan Xiang. Brother Lu, you don't look very willing. Is sandalwood that unattractive? Why is Brother Lu in such a hurry to leave? Fairy Tan Xiang chuckled and blinked her eyes at Lu Ming. Ahem, you're too kind. Fairy Tan Xiang's beauty is unparalleled in the world. It's my honor to be able to stay and drink alone with you. I'm afraid many people would be envious of me. Lu Ming coughed twice and smiled. Brother Lu, please. With a wave of her hand, Fairy Tan Xiang and Lu Ming took their seats. Brother Lu, I've never seen you before. May I know which force you come from? Fairy Tan Xiang poured Lu Ming a glass of wine and asked curiously. I'm not from any major power. I've followed Master since I was young and cultivated in the deep mountains. It wasn't until recently that I've gained some cultivation, and Master let me out of the mountains. Lu Ming made up a story. Oh, really? Then your master must be an expert whose name is known throughout the world, or else he wouldn't be able to teach such an outstanding disciple. Fairy Tan Xiang asked tentatively. Then, she picked up the wine cup and took a sip. Her beautiful eyes glimmered as she looked at Lu Ming. Fairy Tan Xiang's face was slightly pale, but she had a gentle beauty to her. It made people want to protect her and not lie to her. It made people have the urge to tell her all their secrets. At this moment, they were alone. Facing such a beauty, Lu Ming could not help but feel a rush of excitement. He secretly took a deep breath and suppressed the fluttering in his heart, calming himself down. Central Continent's 5 great beauties, they truly lived up to their reputation. Fairy, Master's name is taboo. He told me not to tell anyone. Please forgive me. I'll drink a cup as punishment. Lu Ming picked up the glass and drank it in one go. Fairy Tan Xiang chuckled and continued to pour wine for Lu Ming without asking further. After that, Fairy Tan Xiang and Lu Ming drank and chatted casually, but they did not mention anything about the herb theft that day. After a while, Lu Ming could not help but say, Fairy, the spiritual medicine incident that day was caused by my pet. It was my fault for not disciplining him well. I will definitely compensate you in full in the future. Fairy Tan Xiang smiled and said, it's just some spirit herbs, not worth mentioning. Brother Lu, you can take them. There's no need to compensate me. That's not what I'm curious about. If I'm not wrong, Brother Lu doesn't have any mental energy fire at all, but you can move freely in my formation. I'm very curious about this. How did you do it? Ha, luck, that's all luck. That day, I was just randomly walking around. Lu Ming laughed and continued to make up nonsense. Fairy Tan Xiang seemed to be dissatisfied with Lu Ming's answer and rolled her eyes at him. It was a coy and resentful look that made Lu Ming's heart throb a few times. In front of such a beauty, in front of such a gaze, how many people could remain as calm as water? Unless he was not a man, Lu Ming was a normal man. However, Fairy Tan Xiang did not probe further. Everyone had their own secrets. Since Lu Ming did not want to talk about it, it would not be good to probe further. The two of them chatted for a while more before Lu Ming bade farewell to Fairy Tan Xiang. Brother Lu, if you have time, you can come to the Valley of the Medicine Masters to find me. Fairy Tan Xiang said. Definitely. Lu Ming bid farewell with cupped fists and left the alchemy division. After leaving the alchemy division, Lu Ming heaved a long sigh of relief. Although Goddess Sandalwood looked weak, she gave off a lot of pressure. Lu Ming could sense that her martial arts cultivation was very low, but her mental energy fire was extremely terrifying, surging like the ocean. The pressure that Goddess Tan Xiang gave off was even stronger than that of Master Shui Luo and Yin Bupo. I'm afraid that Fairy Tan Xiang has lit 10 mental lamps at perfection. Otherwise, she wouldn't have such a strong pressure. Lu Ming muttered to himself. Although he had defeated Blood Luo Zi, he did not dare to underestimate the other talents. Those who could become second-grade geniuses all had the potential to become emperors. None of them could be underestimated. Moreover, even if they were all second-grade heaven's favorites, there were still some who were stronger and some who were weaker. Lu Ming shook his head to get rid of the distracting thoughts. He returned to the inn and saw Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin. Brother Lu, we plan to go back to the floating mountain to cultivate in seclusion for a while. What about you? Where do you plan to go? Chu Kuang asked. I plan to travel and cultivate while heading to the ancient Saint dynasty. Lu Ming said. Take care, Brother Lu. We'll meet again if there's a chance. Chu Kuang, Zheng Wenjing, and Lu Ming bade their farewells and left. Not long after Chu Kuang and Zhang Wenjin left, Lu Ming left the city of Dan and headed west. After leaving the city of Pills, Lu Ming rose into the air and left in an instant. However, after flying for tens of thousands of miles, Lu Ming frowned and stopped. Ever since he left the Pill City, he felt that someone was following him. Who is it? Come out. Lu Ming's gaze turned to the back. Hee, you have sharp senses. With a sneer, two figures stepped through the air and appeared in front of Lu Ming. Cold Blood Hall, Spiritual God Expert. Lu Ming raised his eyebrows and his eyes looked grave. They were two middle-aged burly men. One was bald and the other had a big beard. They were dressed in blood-red robes. Most importantly, Lu Ming could not see through their auras at all. They were definitely not Spirit Embryo Realm martial artists but Spiritual God Realm. Cold Blood Hall actually had two Spiritual God Realm experts following him. You want to take revenge for Blood Luo Zi? Lu Ming asked. The vital essence in his body began to circulate. He did not dare to be careless in the face of Spiritual God Realm powerhouses. Moreover, there were two of them. Hee, it's one thing to avenge young Master Shui Luo. Also, young Master Shui Luo said that you've mastered a secret technique that has a powerful devouring power. Hand over the secret technique, and perhaps you'll die a quick death. The bald man sneered. Lu Ming's eyes flickered. It turned out that Blood Luo Zi had taken a fancy to his devouring technique. It was true. The bloodthirsty technique of Cold Blood Hall was similar to the devouring technique of the 9 dragons, but the effect was very different. Naturally, Master Shui Luo was tempted. It's not that easy to kill me. There was a flash of madness in Lu Ming's eyes. Oh, really? You're really confident. However, no matter how much of a genius you are, you're only at the Spirit Embryo Realm. Now, I'll let you see the difference between the Spirit Embryo Realm and the Spiritual God Realm. The bald man's eyes glowed with ferocity, then he said to the bearded brawny man, I'll attack, and you'll hold the line, how about it? Sure. With that, the bearded man's figure flashed and he appeared behind Lu Ming, blocking Lu Ming's retreat. Chapter 1029. 1029 A great battle against a spirit god expert. Boom! A terrifying aura burst out from the bald man's body. Endless blood-red light burned and jumped around the bald man like flames, making him look like a demon that had crawled out of hell. Roar! 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 The dragon's roar continued to ring out from within Lu Ming's body. There were 6 consecutive dragon roars. Facing a spiritual god, Lu Ming did not dare to hold back at all. He immediately burst out with 6 streams of dragon energy. Lu Ming's body could not withstand the power of the 6 streams of dragon energy at the same time. His body became even more burly, and purple gold scales crawled out from under his skin and covered his entire body. His claws had also become like dragon claws. The bald youth's pupils shrank, and then he sneered, "Small tricks, blood axe strike, chop." The bald man stepped forward. The blood light around him condensed into a blood-red battle axe. He waved the battle axe and slashed it at Lu Ming. Boom! Lu Ming clenched his fist and cast the prison-suppressing heavenly art. 5 intents erupted at the same time, blasting toward the bald youth. The fist and the bloody axe collided, creating a terrifying vibration. The space was distorted, and a hideous crack appeared. After a loud noise, Lu Ming's body trembled and he retreated rapidly. He stomped on the sky, causing loud explosions. He retreated about 100 meters before he stopped. However, that was all. Lu Ming was not injured. On the other side, the bald man's body also trembled and he took a few steps back. Impossible! The bald man roared, his eyes full of disbelief. The bearded man was the same. He looked at the scene in disbelief. Lu Ming had actually repelled the bald man. How was this possible? Lu Ming was only at the early stage of the 9th level spirit embryo realm. How could he have such terrifying combat power? Did you hold back your strength in the battle with young Master Shueluo? The bald burly man's eyes were filled with shock, which then turned into cold killing intent. 1st level of spiritual god realm. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. This bald burly man's cultivation was at the 1st level of the spiritual god realm. Moreover, Lu Ming estimated that the bloodline that he had awakened should not be too high. He stared at the bald man and didn't answer. Brat, don't think that you can fight me just because you can block one of my moves. Die, die. The bald man flew into a rage out of humiliation. His killing intent surged like the tide as he wielded the blood axe and slashed at Lu Ming continuously. Lu Ming activated the prison-suppressing heavenly art and attacked continuously, engaging in a great battle with the bald burly man. Boom! 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 Terrifying explosions rang out continuously. Lu Ming circulated his 5 intents to the extreme and blocked the attacks crazily. Although he was completely at a disadvantage and was suppressed by the bald man, he finally managed to resist. After more than a dozen moves, Lu Ming was forced to retreat thousands of meters. The bearded man was always behind Lu Ming. Boom! With another move, there was a huge explosion. Lu Ming retreated quickly and spat out a mouthful of blood. In the end, he was injured, but his eyes were still extremely bright. Ha ha ha, so this is the combat strength of the spiritual god realm. It's nothing more than this. Lu Ming laughed and mocked him on purpose. The bald burly man's combat strength should be at the bottom of the spiritual god realm. In the spiritual god realm, even those of the same level would have a huge difference in combat strength. For example, those who had comprehended a god-level martial technique were much stronger than those who had not. This bald man had not comprehended a god-level martial technique and was only using a high-grade demigod-level martial technique. Also, the comprehension of intent and the level of bloodline determined the strength of one's combat power. This bald burly man was not very strong in all aspects. Therefore, Lu Ming was able to withstand it. If it were another 1st level spiritual god realm expert who had comprehended a divine level martial technique, Lu Ming would definitely not be able to withstand it. Damn it, kid, you're looking for death. The bald burly man bellowed in rage. He was actually looked down upon by Lu Ming, an ant in the spirit embryo realm. This made the bald burly man go crazy. A blood-red battle axe floated above his head, surrounded by 3 golden chakra. A third-level divine rank bloodline was considered a very low-level bloodline among spiritual god realm martial artists. The bald man transformed into a blood-red battle axe and slashed at Lu Ming. The power was even more terrifying. "You're the only one with a bloodline." The prison-suppressing steel bloodline appeared above Lu Ming's head, and his 5 meridian cycles glowed. Lu Ming transformed into the prison-suppressing steel and activated the prison-suppressing heavenly art, crashing toward the blood-red battle axe. Boom! The prison-suppressing steel was knocked away, and the blood-red axe was also knocked back. "Damn it, let's attack together and cripple him!" The bald man roared. "Kill! Blood lion!" The bearded man shouted, and a blood lion appeared above his head. It also had a third-level divine bloodline. He transformed into a blood lion and pounced at Lu Ming. He clawed at the prison-suppressing steel and sent it flying. The prison-suppressing steel kept shaking. How despicable! 2 spiritual gods actually joined forces to fight me. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by the world if this news spreads? Lu Ming shouted. "As long as I kill you and you say you can no, I'll kill you." The blood-red battle axe arrived in front of the prison-suppressing steel in an instant and slashed at Lu Ming. "Suppress!" The prison-suppressing steel glowed. This time, Lu Ming burst out all his vital essence and used the prison-suppressing heaven technique with all his might. The vital essence in his body was completely extracted in an instant. Clang! The prison-suppressing steel and the bloody axe collided, and both of them were pushed back hundreds of meters. There was not a drop of essential core left in Lu Ming's body. However, the essential core from the Na Yuan stone gushed into Lu Ming's body crazily and replenished his essential core. Lu Ming's essential core was instantly full. "Kill, we must kill." The bald burly man was extremely shocked. Xue Luozi had told him that Lu Ming's combat strength was only slightly stronger than his. However, he now realized that Lu Ming's combat strength was not just slightly stronger than Xue Luozi's. It was a whole lot stronger. It was unbelievable that Lu Ming could block his attack and even send him flying. Roar! The blood lion roared and charged at Lu Ming. At this moment, Lu Ming had just retreated and had no time to counterattack. The blood lion's claw slammed heavily on the prison-suppressing steel, and the prison-suppressing steel collapsed instantly. However, the moment the prison-suppressing steel collapsed, a dragon's roar was heard, and a true dragon flew out. No, those were not real dragons, but 9 dragons. The blood lion turned pale with fright. It had actually seen the form of the legendary 9 dragons. The moment the prison-suppressing steel's bloodline was destroyed, Lu Ming burst out his 9 dragons bloodline and flew out as 9 dragons. The 9 dragon claws stepped in the air, and a terrifying power blasted toward the blood lion. In its alarm, the blood lion was unable to unleash its full power, and the 9 dragons charged past it. "Let's go." Lu Ming did not hesitate to use the 9 dragons' heaven-treading steps to escape the encirclement. With his current combat strength, he was not a match for a spiritual god realm master. He could not even defeat 1, let alone 2. If he continued to fight, he would only die of exhaustion. Damn it, chase! The blood-red battle axe transformed back into the bald man and chased after Lu Ming with a furious roar. The blood lion also transformed into human form and chased after Lu Ming. However, with the 9 dragons form and the 9 dragons sky-treading steps, his speed was amazing. Slowly, he pulled away from the bald man and the bald man. Chapter 1030. 1030 Breakthrough, Mutation. After traveling hundreds of thousands of miles, Lu Ming rushed into a forest and transformed into his human form. A long spear condensed in his hand and spun rapidly like a drill. With a pft, Lu Ming rushed into the ground. The long spear dug a hole in the ground. Lu Ming rushed in and at the same time, his essential core burst forth. The hole behind him collapsed and blocked the hole. Lu Ming kept drilling into the ground. He only stopped after he had gone down about 100 miles. With a thought, Lu Ming appeared in the mountain and river diagram. Deep underground, there was only one mountain and river diagram. The moment Lu Ming entered the mountain and river diagram, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Previously, he had been hit by the blood lion twice in a row and had suffered quite a bit of injury. The spiritual god realm is really powerful. I'm not even a match for the most ordinary spiritual god realm. Lu Ming pondered secretly. The bald man and the bearded man were definitely at the bottom of the spiritual god realm. They were weak in all aspects, but Lu Ming was still not a match for them. Previously, he had already unleashed his strongest battle prowess and used all of his techniques. Even so, he was still at a disadvantage when facing the bald man alone. Unless he used the prison suppressing heaven technique with all his might and unleashed his strongest attack, he would not be able to match the bald man. However, Lu Ming's most powerful attack would exhaust his essential core with just one move. If it were not for the spatial elemental stone, he would not have dared to use it. When I break through to the great circle of the spirit embryo realm, I won't be afraid of the weakest spirit god. I can even suppress them. Lu Ming summed up his own abilities. Then, he circulated the true war dragon technique and started to heal his injuries. Just as Lu Ming entered the mountain and river diagram, the bald man and the bearded man appeared in the sky above the forest. Damn it! How did that kid's aura disappear? The bald man shouted angrily. He should be hiding. Let's force him out. The bearded man's eyes flickered with a cold light as he slammed his palm down. A 10-mile-long blood-colored palm print covered the sky and smashed toward the ground. Boom! The mountains exploded and the earth caved in. A 10-mile wide and 10-mile deep palm print appeared on the ground. Around the palm print were countless cracks that spread in all directions. Countless demonic beasts were turned into ashes by this palm. Then force him out. The bald man waved his hands, and countless terrifying blood-red lights slashed toward the vast land. Boom! 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 Mountains exploded, ancient trees crumbled, and the earth sank. Countless living beings were turned into ashes under the attacks of the two. This place looked like it was the end of the world. The destructive power of a spiritual god realm master's full-force attack was too shocking. Not long after, the ground within a radius of 1,000 miles was split open and pierced through. All kinds of deep pits and cracks filled the area. The originally lively mountains and peaks had become deathly silent. After more than 10 minutes, the bald man and the bearded man stood in the air with ugly expressions. There was no trace of Lu Ming. He could not sense any trace of Lu Ming either. Lu Ming had escaped. The two spiritual god powerhouses were supposed to be in the bag. Now that Lu Ming had escaped, they did not know how to answer to Master Blood Luo. Damn it, the next time I see him, I'll skin him alive. The bald man gritted his teeth. Forget it, let's go back. The ancient herb garden is more important. After spending so much time, it's finally about to open. The big bearded man said. N. The bald man nodded, and the two of them left. A 100 miles underground, Lu Ming was healing his injuries in the mountain and river diagram. A day later, Lu Ming's injuries had fully recovered. The Earth Essence realm seems to have loosened. Lu Ming's eyes suddenly lit up. After the previous battle, Lu Ming realized that the Earth concept that had been stuck at a bottleneck had finally loosened up and there were signs of a breakthrough. Lu Ming placed the path understanding ancient tree at the side, closed his eyes, and focused on his comprehension. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. 2 days later, Lu Ming was surrounded by the five-colored concept. His aura was stronger than it was 2 days ago. I've finally broken through to the great circle of level 3 Earth concept. Lu Ming opened his eyes and a faint smile appeared at the corners of his lips. Now, his water concept was at the 4th level, while his wind, fire, thunder, and earth concepts were at the 3rd level, which was the Great Circle. Now that Lu Ming had unleashed all 5 of his concepts, the power was much stronger than it was a few days ago. This was because the Earth Essence realm was only at the peak of level 3 upper tier. If I were to face Blood Luo Zi now, even if I don't use the prison suppressing heavenly technique or my bloodline, I can still suppress him. Lu Ming thought in his heart. It's been 3 days. Those 2 guys should have left by now. Let's go out and take a look. With a single thought, Lu Ming exited the mountain and river diagram and continued to condense the long spear. He dug through the ground and headed toward the surface. Not long after, Lu Ming appeared on the ground silently. He was speechless as he looked at the desolate surroundings. He knew very well that the bald man and the burly man must have wreaked havoc in the surroundings in order to find him. Looks like they've left. Master Shui Luo, I'll have to settle this score with you sooner or later. A cold glint flashed in Lu Ming's eyes and he was about to head west. At this moment, Lu Ming's gaze shifted and he looked in the south direction. In an unknown distance, a green pillar of light shot up into the sky. What's that? Could it be that a treasure has appeared? Lu Ming was secretly surprised. Spiritual herbs. I can sense the aura of countless spiritual herbs. Charge! Lu Ming, charge! Dandan appeared on Lu Ming's shoulder, shouting and wrangling, her small eyes shining. Alright, let's go and take a look. Lu Ming's figure moved and he headed in the direction of the light pillar. At this moment, the light pillar could be seen within a radius of 100,000 miles. The light pillar is soaring into the sky. There must be a treasure coming into being. Let's go and take a look. Let's go, this is my great opportunity. From all directions, everyone who saw the light pillar rushed towards it. Haha, this opportunity is mine. A red-haired elder with a soaring aura rushed toward the light pillar. He was a spiritual god realm existence. The treasure's appearance attracted everyone's attention. Lu Ming soon approached the area where the light pillar was. It was a vast and endless mountain and forest. It's actually here. Lu Ming stopped in the air, feeling a little surprised. Lu Ming was very familiar with the forest in front of him. He had passed through this forest when he, Chu Kuang, and Zhang Wenjin were on their way to the heavenly pillar. They also encountered a spiritual god realm expert from Cold Blood Hall who massacred an entire town to heal himself. Lu Ming and the other 2 even had a fierce battle with the spiritual god realm expert. Lu Ming was originally heading west. Previously, he had a huge battle with the bald man and the burly man. When he escaped, he chose a random direction. He did not expect to be near this place. Could it be that the injured spiritual god expert from Cold Blood Hall was related to this light pillar? What ruins did Cold Blood Hall find here? Lu Ming could not help but let his imagination run wild. Chapter 1031. 1031 The Ancient Herb Garden. The injured spiritual god stage powerhouse was in this forest. Now, the light pillar was also in this forest. Lu Ming had no choice but to link the 2 together. It seems that even if there are treasures here, it won't be easy to get them. There must be spiritual god realm powerhouses here. Lu Ming thought to himself. However, he did not retreat just like that. Instead, he concealed his aura and flew down the mountain forest, sprinting in the direction of the light pillar. Buzz! Whoosh! When he was about to reach the light pillar, he heard the sound of something breaking through the air from other directions. Lu Ming discovered 3 burly men and 2 elders. They were moving forward at high speed and rushed into a circle of light. They were the martial artists nearby who had been attracted here. What a big formation. As he neared the light pillar, Lu Ming could sense that there was a huge formation in front of him. On one side of the formation, there was a gap that formed a circle of light. The green light pillar had burst out from this gap. From the gap, there was an extremely dense spiritual qi. It was obvious that a hole had been opened in this great array. Lu Ming, there's a herb garden inside. I can smell spiritual herbs. Dandan twitched her nose and kept sniffing. A medicinal garden? Could it be Medicine King's Valley's medicine garden? Lu Ming was shocked. The Valley of the Medicine Masters was not far from here. When Lu Ming heard about the herb garden, the first thing he thought of was the Valley of the Medicine Masters. I don't think so. This array is very terrifying, but it was set up a long time ago. I'm afraid it's been more than 1,000,000 years. Dandan said. 1,000,000 years or more? Lu Ming was shocked. 1,000,000 years ago, wasn't that ancient times? This was an ancient medicine garden. Let's go in and take a look. Lu Ming's figure flashed and he rushed into the circle of light, disappearing. The ancient herb garden was sealed by a large array. After so many years, there might be extremely precious spirit herbs. Lu Ming did not want to miss it. Within the light circle, there were also mountains and forests. However, the heaven and earth spiritual qi was dozens of times denser than the outside. There was another kind of energy in the spiritual qi, the origin qi. Lu Ming swept his gaze around and realized that the flowers, grass, and trees here were more lively and were growing more luxuriantly. Lu Ming, let's go. I can smell the spiritual herbs. Dandan shouted, spread her short legs, and ran forward. Lu Ming followed Dandan and walked forward. At the same time, he observed his surroundings carefully. We're late. Some of the spirit herbs have been dug away. Along the way, Dandan found a few pits and sighed. Judging from the aura of the remaining spirit herbs, they were probably all level 8 spirit herbs. Level 8 spiritual herbs were dozens of times more precious than level 7 spiritual herbs. Clearly, there were already quite a number of people who came in before, and the spirit herbs were all dug up. Dandan didn't go straight forward, but continued to fly to the left. After 10,000 miles, they finally found spiritual herbs. 2 of them were level 8 spiritual herbs. They dug them out and stuffed them into their mouths with joy. They found quite a few spiritual herbs along the way. They were at least level 7, and many of them were level 8. Lu Ming did not snatch it from Dandan and gave it all to her. Now that his physical body had achieved complete grade 8, ordinary grade 8 spiritual medicine would not be of much use if he wanted to break through to grade 9. He could only do so if he obtained a grade 9 spiritual medicine. It was not easy to cultivate the 9th grade body, because the 9th grade body was the highest realm of the body and the foundation to break through to the martial emperor realm. Only by cultivating the body to the completion of the 9th grade body could one break through to the martial emperor realm. However, it was very difficult for the body to break through to rank 9. It was even more difficult to complete the breakthrough. In fact, many second and even third-class geniuses in the central continent had cultivated their physical bodies to the peak of the 8th stage. After all, he was a prodigy from an overlord force. His physical body cultivation technique was definitely top-notch. It was not inferior to Lu Ming's 10,000 spiritual combat body. It might even be better. He also had plenty of resources. Naturally, his physical body was strong. Lu Ming needed level 9 spiritual herbs. Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a deafening roar came from the front. Lu Ming's expression changed slightly. Someone was fighting. Let's go and take a look. Lu Ming grabbed Dandan and walked forward. There were two old men in front of him, attacking the other two. The other two people were a middle-aged man and a young woman. At this moment, the burly man and the woman were completely at a disadvantage. The two old men were both in the great circle of the spirit embryo realm, and the burly man was also in the great circle of the spirit embryo realm. They were locked in a battle with one of the old men. On the other hand, the young woman was only at the 6th level of the spirit embryo realm. Although she was also a heaven's favorite with powerful combat strength, she was no match for the elder at the perfected spirit embryo realm with her 6th level spirit embryo realm cultivation. She could be killed at any time. Miss! The burly man roared and wanted to help, but he was held back by the other party and couldn't get away. Hee, die! An old man sneered. At this moment, Lu Ming had already quietly approached. He immediately relaxed when he saw that the strongest was only at the perfected spirit embryo realm. That's Zhou Xin. Lu Ming's eyes flickered as he recognized the woman. Back in the Pill City, Zhou Xin was the one who gave Lu Ming a piece of purple jade that contained the storage elemental stone. Lu Ming was still very grateful to Zhou Xin. Now that Zhou Xin was in trouble, he naturally wouldn't leave her in the lurch. Buzz! His body flashed and he charged towards the old man who had attacked Zhou Xin. Upon hearing the commotion, the few of them turned to look at Lu Ming. It's you. Zhou Xin's gaze flickered and she recognized Lu Ming. A 9th level spirit embryo realm brat is courting death. The old man grinned and revealed a ferocious expression. His claws were like blades as he clawed at Lu Ming. Whoosh! Lu Ming waved his hand and a ray of spear light pierced through the elder's defense. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood as it pierced towards the elder's glabella. No, spare my life. The old man was extremely shocked. He knew that he had encountered a terrifying heaven's favorite, but it was already too late. The old man was pierced by the spear radiance and died. The other old man who was fighting with the middle-aged man saw this and was scared out of his wits. He immediately ran away, but a spear light flashed and nailed the old man to the ground. This! Zhou Xin was stunned. From the moment Lu Ming appeared, the two Great Circle Spirit Embryo experts were instantly killed by him. They did not have the slightest ability to resist. Miss Zhou, I didn't expect to see you here. Do you still remember me? Lu Ming smiled faintly. Young Master Lu, I didn't expect you to be this strong. Zhou Xin's eyes flickered and she was a little surprised. Zhou Xin guessed that Lu Ming was a third-grade heaven's favorite since he was able to kill two perfected spirit embryo realm experts so easily. Miss! The burly man came to Zhou Xin's side and called out in concern. Uncle Lu, I'm fine. This is young Master Lu, Lu Shaoqing. Zhou Xin introduced. Thank you, young Master Lu, for saving me. The middle-aged man cupped his fists, but there was a hint of vigilance in his eyes. Young Master Lu, are you here to look for spirit herbs too? Zhou Xin asked. That's right. I was attracted by the light pillar, so I came to take a look. Lu Ming nodded. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.